Yihan, our male lead. He's just arrived to see his grandfather, and as he steps into Grandpa's office, he spots an envelope, prompting him to casually question why he's been summoned to handle such mundane tasks. Grandpa, with a sly grin, reminds Yihan of his promise to take care of this stuff and challenges him to finish it within a day. Yihan, raising an eyebrow, asks if these are just boring receipts. He goes on about his involvement in various charitable associations, puzzled as to why a busy guy like him needs to bother with receipts, and in a dramatic fashion, tears one apart. Curiosity gets the better of Yihan, and he opens another envelope. Surprise! They turn out to be donation requests for noble causes, and Grandpa encourages him to contribute. Yihan, looking thoroughly surprised, asks if this means he can have free reign. Grandpa, with a knowing smile, suggests he already acts that way and gives him the authority to decide where the money goes. In an unusual moment of candor, Grandpa shares that he hasn't had a moment's rest since handing over the company to his son. He hints that if Yihan handles this task properly, there might be more exciting responsibilities in the future. Eager to please, Yihan promises to do whatever his grandfather wants. In the next scene, Yihan is sitting with his parents. They're discussing the trend of gaining experience before taking over a company. His mom suggests that trying his hand at Jaeil Hospital, with all its history, would be an ideal move. His dad has been eyeing it for a while, especially since the hospital chairman mentioned stepping down. Yihan, however, seems distracted during the conversation. They have to bring him back into the discussion and encourage him to participate. The scene then cuts to the prestigious Seomoon Jaeil Hospital, where we see a doctor known as Dr. Yoon. She's getting questioned about a patient's vitals. She confidently reports that the heart rate is normal, and all other indicators look good. Dr. Yoon Haejun is the doctor doing the questioning, and as it turns out, she's our protagonist. She hints that Dr. Young might take over the rest of the surgery, implying her possible departure. Some fellow doctors invite her to dinner, but she politely declines, citing other plans. Her colleagues are undeniably captivated by her. Dr. Young herself can't help but admire Dr. Haejun's charisma and cool demeanor. She wonders how a first-year fellow can be so perfect. Rumor has it that Dr. Haejun was quite popular at Hankook University Hospital, perhaps even the queen bee. Yet, she never complains about the challenging surgeries, even with a busy schedule. Dr. Young sometimes finds her a bit unapproachable but still can't deny her perfection, which makes her the rising star in cardiothoracic surgery. Haejun then bursts into Dr. Park In-myung's office and calls his name. She asks if he's getting ready to leave, and he advises her to be cautious. She admits that she came because of him and expresses uncertainty about what she'll do if he departs. He encourages her to keep up the good work. They discuss his job and the illnesses he deals with while she provides motivation. She advises him to rest well for the next 3 months and promises to manage things at the hospital, assuring him that Jaeil, with its 100 years of history, will be just fine. Dr. Park's got a hefty dose of regret these days. He's second-guessing himself, thinking maybe he should have left Haejun back at Hankook University Hospital. He's putting the blame squarely on his own shoulders for being a tad too self-centered. But Haejun is having none of it. She's actually enjoying her time at Jaeil Hospital. Dr. Park's got this fire in his belly to stay put at Jaeil and set up a heart transplant center. He's even got this grand plan to bring in the other Hankook alumni. He then spills the beans to Haejun about the new chairman, the Seomoon Group's eldest son, about to take the reins. Word on the street is that this guy's tough as nails. Haejun, being the voice of reason, tries to soothe his nerves. She tells him to focus on getting back in tip-top shape so they can cut the ribbon together at the Heart Transplant Center's grand opening. She also promises to hold down the fort at Jaeil Hospital. Meanwhile, Yihan is having a heart-to-heart with his parents. He's questioning whether they want to shuffle him off to the hospital because his reputation took a hit after that merger fiasco. He's got a strong argument. He claims he doubled the company's sales and shouldn't be forced out just because of image troubles. His mother tries to preach the gospel of coexistence, but Yihan reluctantly agrees to go along with their plan. He figures he'll prove himself by boosting the hospital's sales within a year. He's not having any of his mom's matchmaking ideas, though, insisting she ditch that if he succeeds. With that, he makes a hasty exit from the room. In another corner of the hospital, Dr. Haejun has just wrapped up her patient update with her colleagues. She keeps standing, suggesting there's more to discuss. She drops the bombshell that their center's head will be MIA for the next 3 months. Then, she dives into her ambitious dream of creating a heart transplant center. The catch? It's not in next year's budget, thanks to the chairman's ailment. She stresses the need for a plan, especially with supplementary budget planning on the horizon. Her colleagues don't seem convinced though. They argue that it's unnecessary given the expectation of a new chairman soon. They figure only Dr. Park can champion this cause. The meeting quickly disperses, and one of the doctors even warns her about being overly ambitious regarding the heart transplant center. Haejun doesn't show much reaction and just lowers her head. After the meeting, a few compassionate colleagues approach her, expressing concern and offering to help. She thanks them and asks for patience during the 3 months until Dr. Park's return. One colleague remains skeptical, citing unsettling rumors about the new chairman. The mysterious chairman's name keeps cropping up, causing unease. Haejun assumes he's just another wealthy heir, but her colleagues reveal insider info from someone in the Seomoon Motors strategic planning team. Apparently, he's no ordinary rich kid. Trying to offer solace, Haejun reminds them that this new chairman is, after all, just a human being. Her colleagues look to her as their beacon of hope, their trust unwavering. Inwardly though, she's overwhelmed, doubting her ability to lead in such trying times. But then, she recalls some encouraging words from Dr. Park, urging her not to give up. With conviction, she reminds them of the hospital's promise, a dedicated transplant center for the cardiothoracic surgery department when they recruited Dr. Park. She adds that with her hardworking colleagues, they can make it happen, though she never expected to be relied upon like this. Curious about the chairman, she asks for more details. A colleague suggests they might be exaggerating, that the chairman isn't a monster. Haejun seeks clarification on the term animal, and her colleague explains the chairman's intimidating yet captivating presence. This amuses her, and she quips that they'll find out soon enough if the new chairman is truly human. Just then, an emergency call jolts her into action. There's a patient in need, so she dashes off, unaware that she's about to cross paths with the new chairman. Meanwhile, our new chairman, Seo Yihan, observes her swift run and comments on her speed, doubting she's a patient. Noticing Dr. Yoon's colleagues following her, his subordinate offers to find out about their department. Yihan, however, believes a hospital should always be bustling. The busier they are, the more money they make. Arriving at the emergency medical center, Dr. Yoon is briefed about an accident at a construction site that's made headlines. 2 patients were already dead on arrival. Neurosurgery and general surgery have been alerted, but she's the first on the scene. So she swiftly prepares for action, inquiring about the accident's severity and the patient's consciousness status. Another doctor provides vital signs and potential injuries. Haejun suggests a tracheoscopy to assess the airways and immediate transport to an operating room. Noting that the patient's head seems fine, she believes that addressing the lung issues should set the course. She instructs the doctor to summon an anesthesiologist while she calls her team. Suddenly, the doctor interrupts, insisting they can't proceed without the patient's next of kin or a signed consent form. Unfazed, Haejun firmly asserts that if 2 or more medical professionals agree, they can proceed with the surgery. She points to herself and the doctor, indicating their agreement with a confident smile. In another scene, we find Yihan in his office, accompanied by a curious little boy. The kid starts firing questions about why his grandpa left, even though Yihan is here. The little one thinks grandpa's acting strange, so Yihan tries to ease the child's worries by playfully ruffling his hair. He can't help but find the kid incredibly adorable. The little guy then asks if he can play with some papers and reminds himself of the rules for this paper play. Eventually, Yihan gives in and grants the child permission to do whatever he wants with those papers. Meanwhile, back at the emergency ward, Haejun is persistently trying to convince her colleague, Juno, to go along with their proposal for a patient's surgery. But Juno remains steadfast in his refusal. He points out that the last time Haejun initiated something like this, Dr. Park had to step in to assist. Plus, Juno mentions that he'll need consultations from both GS and CS. Surprisingly, Haejun doesn't give up and continues her efforts to persuade him, but Juno keeps emphasizing that it will cost tens of millions of won. Their discussion keeps going back and forth, debating whether they should help the patient or not. Finally, Haejun drops a bombshell. She mentions that she knows someone who can assist with the finances for the surgery. She informs Juno about a new foundation funded by a big company that helps foreign laborers with medical expenses, and Dr. Jang is one of their advisors. Juno is taken aback and asks if she's talking about the same Dr. Jang from Hankook University Hospital. Dr. Yoon confirms this and explains that an accident like this one will likely secure funding. Moreover, Dr. Jang had promised to assist her if the need ever arose. Therefore, they decide to move forward with the surgery on the patient. After the surgery, Haejun calls Dr. Jang to share the news of the successful procedure, and they work out the details during the call. She then turns to her colleague and informs him that the doctor from Hankook University Hospital has agreed to handle it. She also mentions that someone from the foundation will come to get the patient's signature once they wake up. However, Juno expresses his concern. Not only about the success of other people's surgeries but also about Dr. Yoon getting involved in too many things. In response, she confidently asserts that her surgeries always turn out well, echoing Juno's thoughts. However, he still believes she should have stayed at Hankook University Hospital, as it would have been easier for her, and she could have become the second Dr. Kang Joo-hyun. While their conversation continues, Juno rummages through his lab coat and finally hands Haejun a lollipop. Haejun then asks what's so bad about Jaeil Hospital, and Juno teases her, saying that the renowned Yoon Haejun is hiding out here, enjoying a lollipop. He then playfully asks what he gets for helping her, and she reminds him of a past incident when he asked her out during orientation, and she rejected him, leading him to cry by a streetlight. She says this memory will remain a secret as a reward for his assistance. Kyungmin, the guy who's come to find Haejun, gives her the lowdown on the attendings searching for her because the new chairman is rolling into town today. He spills the beans that this chairman is currently doing the hospital tour thing before his official big shot ceremony. Oh, and Dr. Choi was the lucky first one to meet him, and, boy, was he excited. Haejun can't help but recall the strange rumor her buddy mentioned about this new chairman being part human, part animal. She nudges Kyungmin to stay cautious and not get too up close and personal. She even chuckles about how this new chairman's arrival feels like a scene straight out of a movie or one of those wild Greek myths. She chalks it up to their shared fascination with chaebols, all thanks to capitalism's influence. Now, when Kyungmin asks if she'd like to chat about the hospital's current situation, Chairman Seo Yihan politely declines, not wanting to hassle anyone busy. They go on to do the official meet and greet with the doctors. It's like a lineup or something. And when it's Haejun's turn, bam. She recognizes the guy right away, having bumped into him earlier with Director Han. She figures it's her duty as a part of the Jaeil Hospital family to know the chairman's face. Haejun starts blabbing about the chairman's fame, but he cuts her off, curious about what the gossip mill is churning out about him. She's caught off guard, and he quickly realizes he's played a joke that's made her a bit nervous. He apologizes and, like a pro, she promises to meet his expectations. He's sharp, he though, notices her body language, and suspects she's got something on her mind. But just as she's about to bring up the heart transplant center issue, her colleague barges in with a bombshell. The patient from earlier has woken up. Haejun plays it cool, brushing it off like she'll swing by later. Little does she know, things are about to hit the fan. Turns out, that patient not only woke up but pulled a Houdini and fled the hospital. Dr. Yoon sprints to the ward to get the scoop. She asks if they've checked the CCTV footage. They've done that and called security, but the unfortunate truth is, the patient's gone, even swiping clothes from the hospital's laundry room and possibly hitching a ride in a taxi. Haejun feels like she's been punched in the gut, contemplating a dramatic fainting spell as a solution. Her colleague, though, talks some sense into her. They urge her to stay composed. They're expecting a call from the police since security tracked the taxi's license plate. They guess the patient made a run for it, cause the hospital bills were stacking up. Dr. Yoon, though, thinks this could have been avoided if the patient knew his expenses were covered. While they wait for the police to ring back, she confides in her colleague, Mingguk, that the patient's not likely to stroll back in willingly. In another scene, news of the case reaches the attention of the newly appointed chairman, Seo Yihan. He contemplates that it must be a substantial surgery, given the significant cost involved. The hospital's director provides Chairman Seo with the specifics, indicating that both CS and GS invested a collective 10 hours in the surgery, in addition to various tests conducted on the patient. After a thorough interrogation, Chairman Seo deduces that the catalyst for this event was none other than Dr. Yoon. His mind begins to ponder her true nature and motivations. Chairman Seo proceeds to inquire about the potential financial repercussions for the hospital. The director elucidates that while they may not be a prominent university hospital, they have successfully met all the required standards. He further mentions that, except for Dr. Park, the head of CS, they have not handled many major surgeries here. This unusual circumstance of a first-year fellow undertaking such a procedure raises eyebrows. The chairman, adopting a discerning stance, inquires whether Dr. Yoon maintains a close association with Dr. Park. The director elucidates how Dr. Park's contributions bolstered the hospital's reputation, leading the previous chairman to overlook some of his actions. However, he cautions against allowing Dr. Park to establish his own surgical team. The director suggests implementing disciplinary measures, and upon inquiry into the specifics, he elucidates that Dr. Yoon will be required to issue a written apology and preventive measures will be enforced to avoid a recurrence. Intriguingly, the director privately reflects on the Seomoon Group's heir, who places a high value on tangible results. Such a figure is unlikely to support a non-profitable heart transplant center. The director also remarks that Dr. Yoon's case revolves around a compassionate female doctor dutifully fulfilling her responsibilities, capturing the chairman's heightened interest. Yihan decides to grace the inaugural ceremony at 2 p.m., and expresses his intention to personally validate the information provided by the director. Meanwhile, Juno takes a moment to inquire about Haejun's state of mind following the recent events, alluding to his earlier prediction that she might encounter difficulties. Haejun requests his guidance and, in a jesting manner, asks him where she might secure 78 million won, and expresses her bewilderment that these events unfolded on the very day the new chairman arrived. Juno inquires whether she has engaged in dialogue with Dr. Park, and she confirms this, detailing the challenges posed by the patient's unexpected departure. Haejun's palpable concern for the patient's well-being strikes her colleague, who observes that she appears more preoccupied with the patient's welfare than her own uncertain professional fate. Juno endeavors to provide reassurance, assuring her that she will not bear the financial burden, and speculates that a written apology may be the extent of the consequences, given the chairman's lack of mention of severe sanctions. Coincidentally, Yihan and the director overhear Haejun's conversation with Juno as they make their way to the inaugural ceremony. At the ceremony, Yihan formally introduces himself as the newly appointed head of Seomoon Jaeil Hospital. He also expresses gratitude for the attendance of all present and pledges his commitment to oversee and enhance the efficiency of all hospital operations. Implicitly, he conveys to Haejun and the entire staff the importance of dedicated and exemplary performance in their respective roles. Juno advises Haejun to avoid making direct eye contact with Chairman Yihan and to maintain a low profile. However, she remains resolute in her determination, particularly in light of the reliance and pride her colleagues place in her accomplishments. Juno finds her assertive behavior intriguing and privately regrets his previous advances during orientation. After Chairman Seo Yihan delivers his speech, the room erupts with enthusiastic applause. Amidst the cheering, he spots Haejun clapping rather vigorously, but there's something about her clapping that piques his curiosity. He takes a mental note of her behavior. The director steps forward, offering commendations to the chairman, affirming that the speech surpassed his expectations and has likely motivated everyone in the room. The director then segues into business talk, mentioning an upcoming dinner meeting with the CEO of Daehan Pharmaceuticals. He adds that he's prepared a comprehensive report on pharmaceutical prices, sales, and companies involved. As the director delves into these matters, Yihan interrupts abruptly, demanding to see Haejun's resume. Meanwhile, in Dr. Choi Dukwan's office, Haejun is enduring a stern reprimand from him. After taking the heat for a while, Haejun decides to make her exit. Her colleagues await her outside, expressing sympathy for the scolding she endured. However, Haejun appears unfazed and reassures them not to worry. She mentions that she just needs to find a way to grab Dr. Choi's attention, considering it's not the first time he's chewed her out. Her colleagues inquire about her plans to speak with the chairman, and she confirms her intent, with them offering to accompany her. Later on, Haejun inquires whether the police or immigration authorities have made contact with the hospital. She's surprised to learn that there's been no response yet. One of her colleagues mentions checking the neighborhood where many foreign workers reside and attempting to obtain CCTV footage. They explain that they've been tirelessly trying to locate the missing patient. Haejun apologizes for dragging them into her predicament, but they reassure her of their willingness to assist. One colleague shares information they've gathered about the new chairman, revealing that he's perceived as cold-hearted and resolute in achieving his goals. Their research suggests that his trust issues stem from a traumatic childhood kidnapping experience and that he's an illegitimate child raised by the family to protect their reputation. He often acts out due to anger towards his birth mother. Just as they're about to present more findings, Haejun intervenes, emphasizing that it's unfair to judge the chairman based on rumors. They quickly apologize for their actions, and she excuses herself to meet with the chairman. Upon reaching the chairman's office, Haejun initiates the conversation by bowing and offering an apology. Perplexed, the chairman inquires about the reason for her apology, to which she explains that it pertains to the foreign patient incident and startling him on his first day at the hospital. The chairman acknowledges the hospital's financial loss of 78 million won and asks if there are any undisclosed costs. He reassures Haejun that he's aware of the situation, understands that it was beyond her control, and advises her to ensure it does not recur. He also comes to the realization that he has misunderstood her character, seeing her as just like everyone else. Grateful for the chairman's understanding regarding the patient issue, Haejun expresses her relief and thanks him. The chairman concludes that the meeting has ended, but Haejun brings up another topic, keeping it concise due to the chairman's busy schedule. Haejun can't help but feel a sense of regret for bringing up something right after Chairman Seo Yihan's arrival. The chairman, however, is intrigued by her intention and encourages her to continue speaking. He's already sorted out the financial matter, and he decides to entertain her and listen to her carefully. Haejun appears a bit hesitant to reveal the true purpose of her visit. Chairman Yihan begins to contemplate ending the meeting due to her reluctance to get to the point. Just as he's about to make that decision, Haejun finally speaks up. She mentions that it's about the establishment of a heart transplant center. This revelation is so surprising that Chairman Yihan is taken aback, causing him to drop his pen. Haejun proceeds to explain that the former chairman had made a promise to Dr. Park In-myung, a dedicated physician with deep care for his patients. The promise was to build a heart transplant center to entice Dr. Park to join Jaeil Hospital. She points out that while they do have a general transplant center, heart transplants are not offered. Dr. Park has been part of the hospital for 3 years now, and Haejun believes it's time to address this matter. Chairman Yihan, however, questions the timing, especially since Haejun had recently caused the hospital a significant financial loss. Haejun acknowledges the unfortunate timing but insists that the heart transplant center is a separate and crucial issue. She explains that Dr. Park couldn't come himself due to medical leave, and this matter is vital for the cardiothoracic department's growth. Curious, Chairman Yihan asks why a first-year fellow like Haejun is representing such an important matter. He expresses doubt about the feasibility of the project, given its likely high cost, and suggests that they shouldn't delve into it further without a written contract. Frustrated, Haejun slams her hand on the chairman's table to emphasize her seriousness. In response, Chairman Yihan reminds her that just as she's devoted to her work as a cardiothoracic surgeon, he's equally committed to leading the hospital toward progress. He emphasizes the need for efficiency and occasionally taking a firm stance. Haejun, feeling disappointed, questions why he appeared forgiving if he's as unyielding as he portrays. Chairman Yihan clarifies that he hasn't forgiven her. Haejun blames herself for assuming that the chairman would overlook her recent mistake. He advises her to let the matter go and not worry about it. As she leaves his office, she pauses to ask if he meant everything he said, given her profession's focus on examining people's hearts. She wishes him good health and departs, encountering a man named Yuhan at the door. After Haejun exits, Yuhan comments on her appearance and inquires about her identity, but Chairman Yihan silences him. Yuhan persists with questions, prompting the chairman to offer him money to keep quiet. The chairman then instructs Yuhan to leave and not visit his office unless it's essential. On his way out, Yuhan notices Haejun's resume on the table, with "Shameless Seal" written boldly on it. In a different scene, we find Haejun deeply engrossed in her phone, furiously researching Chairman Seo Yihan. Her colleague, Juno, enters the room, curiosity etched on his face, and questions her about the intense investigation. Haejun looks at her findings with disappointment, noting the lack of any significant history about the chairman. She expresses her disbelief, asserting that someone as seemingly heartless as him must have some hidden backstory. He couldn't have just materialized out of thin air. In an effort to lift her spirits, Juno offers her a lollipop, clearly taken aback by her sudden sweet tooth, even in her current mood. Haejun sighs and confesses that she doubts she can broach the subject of a heart transplant center with the chairman any longer. Juno, puzzled, inquires about her change in attitude and whether the chairman said something harsh to her. This question irritates Haejun, and she questions whether Juno holds a negative opinion of her. Juno quickly offers her another piece of candy and offers words of encouragement. He reminds her of the times when she used to perform surgeries all on her own before their colleague Oreo joined the team. Haejun adds a touch of humor, joking that if she had operated on Chairman Seo Yihan, she might have discovered a vibranium battery inside him. However, Juno remains baffled because, to his knowledge, the chairman didn't raise his voice or express anger. He struggles to grasp why Haejun is so upset. She retorts that the chairman yelling would have been a more preferable reaction, further confusing Juno. Finally, he asks her what's really going on and whether she intends to give up on the transplant center. Haejun clenches her fists, the lollipop still in hand, and emphatically declares that she will never surrender, firmly asserting her unwavering determination. Meanwhile, Yihan offers an apology for summoning a specific staff member, despite the fact that he's no longer his secretary. However, the young man in question insists that it's an honor to be called upon by the chairman. This young man is revealed to be Kong Cutie, a former employee of Seomoon Motors and a current employee of Seomoon Group. He assures the chairman that he will always respond to his calls, making himself available at any time. Chairman Yihan then inquires about Dr. Park, and Kong Cutie explains that while there was a verbal agreement, nothing was officially documented. He mentions that Dr. Park In-myung is a well-known figure, and it seems that the hospital was willing to accommodate his requests to have him transferred to jail. Kong Cutie further notes that if this were a regular company, they would meticulously assess the pros and cons and formalize a contract, but it appears that hospitals operate differently. Chairman Yihan questions the lack of structure in hospitals, to which Kong Cutie responds that, based on what he has gathered, they often let things slide out of affection for one another. The chairman expresses his determination to bring about change in that regard. Upon their arrival at the hospital, Kong Cutie continues to ponder why Chairman Yihan remains at a place like this and why he wasn't promoted to the headquarters alongside him. He openly suggests that the chairman should try talking to his father again because he shouldn't be confined to a hospital like this. He questions the reasoning behind the chairman's father placing him in what seems like an unrelated hospital. Chairman Yihan interrupts him and reveals that the hospital is not entirely unrelated. They continue their discussion about the chairman's presence in the hospital and potential approaches to address the situation when they suddenly come across Haejun. Yihan finds himself in the midst of a conversation with Haejun, questioning her presence as he suggests they've covered all their discussion points. But Haejun is unwavering, determined to continue the dialogue, firmly stating that they've only just scratched the surface. She proposes taking the conversation outside, but Yihan, instead, gestures for her to step inside. In the subsequent scene, Yihan's mother is engrossed in tending to her beloved flowers when her other son, Yuhan, startles her, resulting in an unfortunate accident that damages one of the delicate blooms. She confides in her son, expressing how much solace the plant brings her nowadays. Yuhan, with a hint of surprise, questions her sentiment, reminding her that she has two perfectly capable sons right there with her. In response, she playfully queries whether he considers himself capable and voices her exasperation, noting that one son is obsessively focused on wealth while the other spends it recklessly. She even jests about having wished for a daughter at times. She asserts that even though her younger son appears outwardly untroubled, he still manages to vex her daily. Yuhan tries to one-up Yihan by mentioning that he offers massages to their mother, unlike his older brother. Igneous, she quips that she'd decline his offer even if he did make one because he terrifies her. However, she acknowledges that having Yuhan around brings her a sense of comfort, and he playfully responds with a saying about the youngest child being the most dutiful. Suddenly, Yuhan playfully requests some money from his mother, but she swats his hand away from her shoulder, instructing him to go to school. He teases her, referring to himself as the youngest and cutest family member who shouldn't be addressed so sternly. However, her phone rings, prompting her to dismiss him with a wave as she takes the call. Undeterred, Yuhan continues to chatter about his visit to Jaeil Hospital to see his brother. It's only when he mentions that his brother is seeing someone that his mother abruptly ends her call. She orders him to return and take a seat, and with a smirk, he claims he's running late for school. Nevertheless, his mother attempts to persuade him to stay and chat with her about the woman he saw his brother with at the hospital. She wants to ensure it's not just Yihan's business partner. Yuhan explains that he doubts it's business-related because his brother even has a nickname for the lady in question. He guides his mother to sit and further explains that his brother and the lady were engrossed in a serious discussion. His mother is taken aback by this revelation and keeps seeking confirmation, while Yuhan reassures her that it's true. She then prods him for details about what he observed between Yihan and the woman, as well as what the nickname is. This revelation leaves her astounded, and Yuhan offers to fetch her a glass of water, inquiring whether he should also retrieve her purse. Meanwhile, Chairman Seo Yihan and Haejun remain engaged in their ongoing discussion. Yihan remains steadfast in his stance that the heart transplant center project cannot proceed. Haejun, maintaining her composure, inquires whether his reservations are solely related to the transplant center or also encompass her personally. Yihan admits that it encompasses both aspects. He elucidates the extensive time and resources required for such a substantial project and expresses his hesitation to commit if he can't have trust in the individuals driving it. While he acknowledges Haejun's exceptional talents and promising future, he grapples with understanding her unwavering determination in pursuing this matter. He emphasizes his aspiration for his employees to function in the most efficient workplace in Korea. However, Haejun interrupts him abruptly, stating her intent to repay the 78 million won. Yihan is taken aback by this revelation, and she reiterates her commitment to reimburse the sum. Haejun continues her conversation with Chairman Seo Yihan, determined to address the issue at hand. She begins by suggesting that if there's any problem he has with her, they should resolve it starting with her repayment of the money she owes. She then poses a hypothetical question, asking if he would reconsider the heart transplant center project if she were to repay the money. However, Yihan finds her statement rather amusing, almost thinking it's a jest. Haejun earnestly attempts to convince him that she's absolutely serious and willing to return the money she has diligently saved. Yihan, intrigued, inquires about why she would spend her hard-earned money in such a manner, to which she explains that the transplant center holds immense personal significance for her. She implores him to take his time and merely consider the idea, even if he doesn't commit to its construction right away. She pleads with him to reconsider. As their conversation continues, Yihan's phone interrupts them with an incoming call, but he chooses to ignore it, signaling to Haejun that there's no need for her to leave. Nonetheless, she insists on excusing herself, sensing the importance of the call, and promises to resume their discussion later. After she exits his office, Yihan answers the call, which happens to be from his mother. His mother playfully teases him, suggesting that he sounds unusually joyful, prompting him to clarify that there's nothing special happening. However, she suspects otherwise, even suggesting that he might be meeting a lady she intends to set him up with for a blind date. Perplexed, Yihan inquires if there's a reason she called other than arranging a date, but she denies it, stating she simply wanted to check on him. She playfully reassures him that she's not setting up a blind date because she's aware he's already seeing someone, confidently asserting that secrets don't stay hidden for long. She even adds the whimsical detail that he's not just seeing anyone but at Seo. It becomes evident to Yihan that this misunderstanding likely stems from his younger brother, Yoon. Meanwhile, Haejun sits outside, where a kind lady offers her a drink, but she politely declines, expressing gratitude for informing her about the chairman's schedule. They engage in conversation about the lady's grandmother, who is recovering well, thanks to the surgery performed by Dr. Yoon. The lady promises to notify Haejun when the chairman finishes his call so she can return to his office promptly. Haejun then reminisces about a meal she had with her colleague, Juno, who expressed surprise at her intention to repay the money, given the financial challenges she faced. Juno reminded her that she had already given all her savings to her mother to help start a store, leaving her financially strained and unable to cover even their current meal, let alone the surgery expenses. He advised her to reconsider, pointing out that 78 million won wouldn't make a significant difference to the wealthy chairman. He questioned her next steps, considering her inability to afford the surgery. Haejun contemplated getting a loan but realized she didn't even know where to begin, coming to terms with the harshness of reality. She believed that she must strive to do better so that her two colleagues, who relied on her, wouldn't regret placing their trust in CS. Back in the present, the lady informs Haejun that the chairman has finished his call. As she re-enters his office, she notices a different expression on his face, leaving her curious about its origin. Yihan, on the other hand, engages in a phone conversation with his mother. She gently reminds him that her birthday is approaching next week and suggests that it would be delightful if he could invite the doctor to the celebration. She emphasizes that she doesn't ask for much, just a chance to catch a glimpse of the lady he's rumored to be romantically involved with. She assures him that she won't pressure him to introduce the girl, a distant observation would suffice. She even uses the excuse of a company gathering to explain her absence and assures him she won't bother the doctor too much. To seal the deal, she promises not to make requests like this again if he grants her this modest wish. Yihan, curious about the repercussions of her breaking this promise, inquires further. His mother, somewhat proudly, mentions her role as the head of the Seomoon Art Gallery. Yihan then playfully suggests that if she does break the promise, he should inherit the art gallery. However, she promptly declines the idea, suggesting that the doctor may have her own plans for that day. She attempts to conclude the conversation by mentioning preparations for food and ends the call. Chairman Yihan, relieved at the prospect of avoiding mundane blind dates, starts entertaining the idea of pretending to be in a romantic relationship with Dr. Yoon. As Haejun enters the room and notices the call has ended, she approaches him, and he offers her a seat. Yihan then presents her with an unexpected proposition. In exchange for her desire to repay the money she owes him, she should pretend to be in a romantic relationship with him. Yihan sweetens the deal by offering her 10 million won for each meeting with his mother. Dr. Yoon is taken aback by this offer, causing her to question its meaning. The chairman clarifies that the payment is specifically for encounters with his mother, and if she's willing to play along, he will compensate her fairly for other aspects of their pretend relationship. Haejun firmly declines the offer, stating that her profession involves healing people's hearts, and she refuses to engage in such deceitful behavior. She intends to pretend this conversation never occurred. As she exits the office, Yihan smirks and suggests that her determination to secure the transplant center might not be as strong as he thought. He reminds her that she once claimed that even his reconsideration would be a victory for her, and he believes the conditions he offered were reasonable. Haejun stands by her decision and confronts Yihan, implying that he enjoys manipulating people to suit his desires, but a heart transplant center is a matter that shouldn't be taken lightly. She leaves 2 million won on his desk and declares that she now owes him 76 million won, promising to repay the rest as soon as possible. Haejun exits the chairman's office, her mind racing with the recent encounter. The whole experience leaves her feeling deeply unsettled. Despite her ongoing financial struggles, she's not desperate enough to tolerate such behavior. The chairman's actions are propelling her toward a significant decision, the notion of setting up her own place, perhaps not a grand one, but with the support of her colleagues. As she walks away, her coworkers call out to her, with Oreo expressing surprise at her shocked behavior, even though he's supposed to be present. She inquires about his unexpected presence, to which he reveals his plan to leave Hankook University Hospital next year and hopes she hasn't forgotten her promise. In haste, she urges him to wait for her. Meanwhile, Chairman Seo Yihan is in his office with Mr. Kong, who's puzzled by the chairman's serious mood. Mr. Kong kindly offers to prepare a birthday gift like he did for the chairman's mother last year. However, the chairman interrupts, mentioning that what his mother truly desires is to see him with a woman. Mr. Kong comments on the chairman's mother always looking out for him, but the chairman contemplates the potential advantages of such an arrangement, possibly involving his mother's art gallery. As the young man exits the chairman's office, he reminds him to prepare a gift for his mother's birthday. Suddenly, Haejun enters the office, and the chairman welcomes her warmly, surprised that she's willing to see him again. She promptly asks him for the details of their upcoming date. The chairman instructs Mr. Kong to arrange outfits for a woman and a man at a boutique in Cheongdam. Haejun is taken aback by the idea of such pretense and ponders why wealthy individuals like Chaebol feel the need to bring a fake partner to their mother's birthdays. Her concern, however, should be more about herself than the chairman. She contemplates how to better understand Chaebol and flawlessly play the role of a girlfriend. She reflects that the last time she fell for someone was in primary school, making this a challenging task. Meanwhile, at the hospital, surgery is underway, and Haejun is leading the procedure while taking the time to educate the other doctors in the room about the surgery. Unexpectedly, she leaves the operating room, leaving the rest of the doctors to continue. As she exits, she encounters Kyung-min, her colleague, who inquires if she's just completed her surgery. She turns the question back to him and asks what he's doing outside, considering he had earlier mentioned he was heading into another operating room. Kyung-min explains that they didn't receive the green light from the anesthesiologist unit. They had scheduled the surgery, but Dr. Seo said they couldn't proceed because the patient hadn't been properly checked for underlying health conditions. So, they need to redo the CAG, coronary artery angiogram. Kyung-min asks Haejun for advice, and she reassures him that it'll be okay as long as they run the tests now. Kyung-min mentions that Dr. Choi is in charge, but Dr. Choi got upset and decided to go home, believing that redoing the tests would take too long, and he didn't want to reschedule for the next week. This made Dr. Seo angry, and he told Dr. Choi to do as he pleases. Haejun can't believe how they're behaving after the patient came all this way for surgery. Kyung-min continues, saying that both doctors had promised to follow the proper procedures, and Haejun agrees with them. She instructs Kyung-min to test the patient for allergies and get a signed consent form. Kyung-min apologizes for bothering her since she just finished her own surgery. Meanwhile, it's time for Chairman Seo Yihan's date with Haejun. It's also the chairman's mom's birthday. The director informs the chairman that he'll be accompanying him today because it's his mom's birthday. The chairman is surprised that the director knows this. The director explains that he knows the birthdays of both of the chairman's parents, and since the chairman is here, it's only right to greet them in person. Although the chairman doesn't see the need for this, the director insists, mentioning that he's the planning director. He offers to show the chairman the indoor garden in the lobby, but the chairman declines immediately. Chairman Seo Yihan then asks for financial statements from the last 3 years, a comparison of their doctors with the top 3 hospitals, information on their VIP wing, and staffing statistics by tomorrow morning. Afterward, he leaves. The chairman spots Haejun crouched behind the gate and questions why she chose this route instead of coming directly from the CS unit. She pats her hair and explains that she didn't want Director Han to get suspicious, as he had been lurking around. The chairman suggests that she could have called him, but then he remembers that she doesn't have his number. Haejun mentions that she won't be able to go to the boutique with him tonight because she needs to finish a patient's test. However, she assures him that she'll still attend his mom's birthday party. The chairman smirks inwardly and says that's why she was hiding in the bushes. He asks her to be there by 7:30 p.m., and she agrees with enthusiasm. Yihan wonders if she has any other requests, but she hesitates and says she can't ask for more. Then, she decides to ask him what she had planned to ask at the boutique, what kind of things his mom likes. Yihan reassures Haejun that she doesn't need to worry, but she insists, emphasizing that she needs to do this properly, otherwise, it will feel like she's doing it for free. She reminds him that this endeavor was meant to help pay off her debt, and she never does things halfway. Regardless of the task at hand, she always gives it her all. Haejun acknowledges that it might be challenging for her to perfectly match his mother's preferences, but she's determined to give it her best effort. She asks for insights into his mother's personality and style because it will guide her choice of attire. Does his mother prefer a more reserved, understated look, or should she go for a more glamorous appearance since it's her birthday? Surprisingly, Yihan responds by saying that all she needs to do is show up, and that's the most important thing to his family. However, if he had to choose, he'd lean toward a more reserved style rather than a flashy one for his mother. Haejun isn't finished, she's also interested in his preferences because even though this is a pretend relationship, understanding each other better is essential. He's taken aback, as he never expected her to be so thorough. She pushes him to share something about himself, what he likes and dislikes, or what she should keep in mind or avoid doing. He hesitates and suggests that he feels she probably has more to share with him. He asks if she has something special to share, but she quickly diverts the conversation, mentioning that the patient must be ready. Since he didn't reveal much, she'll base her outfit choice on what his mother likes. Before parting, he picks a leaf from her clothing and advises her to check herself for any stray items. On the day of the chairman's mother's birthday, he sits with his parents among other guests, who are engaged in hushed conversations and murmurs about him. The whispers and side discussions are so loud that he can clearly hear them. His mother tries to console him, suggesting that he shouldn't pay them any mind. He turns to her and mentions that it seems like they bother her more than they do him. She admits that she had high hopes because he arrived early and didn't expect him to come alone this year. He chides her for potentially spreading the word that he was bringing someone, but she denies having told anyone anything. In response, he decides to give her some space, believing that she might be embarrassed by him. He walks away from the crowd. Mr. Kong approaches the chairman and mentions that the chairman's mother has already asked him several times if her son truly didn't bring anyone. The chairman responds that his mother seems reluctant to believe him. They notice the chairman's mother engaged in conversation with someone. Mr. Kong informs him that she's talking to the wife of the Taegang Group owner, whose son recently got married, so the lady accompanying her must be her daughter-in-law. While stylishly awaiting Haejun's arrival, he asks Mr. Kong for the time, and it's 7:25 p.m. He offers to call the hospital, but the chairman trusts that Haejun will arrive. After a while, he spots her coming from a distance. Yihan descends to meet Haejun, and his mother quickly approaches them upon seeing them together. He swiftly introduces them, and Haejun thanks the chairman's mom for the invitation. However, his mother finds it hard to believe that this is truly his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Haejun believes she's playing her part well, and she apologizes for keeping the chairman waiting. His mother becomes emotional at the sight of them holding hands, deeply touched. As they settle in, he inquires if this is why she asked about his and his mother's preferences. Haejun mentions that he had told her his mother preferred a more reserved image, so she did her best to match that. She also asks if he's content with her appearance, explaining that she put in the effort because it benefits them both, helping maintain his image. He brushes off her explanation and asks if she's this diligent in everything she does. She confirms that she's always diligent because money doesn't fall from the sky. She admits her mistake with the patient but underscores that she's never been frivolous with other people's money. When she starts something, she takes full responsibility for it. Yihan wonders when she had time to prepare. She mentions that she's been managing affairs for 13 professors and 5 division heads for 5 years. She's attended countless events, from welcome parties to retirement ceremonies and birthdays, and the hospital provides everything needed for such occasions. She even dubs herself the Queen of Events and offers her services for anything in the future, from birthdays to funerals and sporting events. She playfully showcases her customer service smile and claims she's willing to attend anything and everything if it helps her reduce her debt before the committee holds a meeting for additional budget allocations. She mentions that she could have done better today, but she's been stuck in operating rooms all day. Yihan is surprised and asks when she eats. She replies that she doesn't eat, which alarms him further. He questions if she hasn't eaten all day and why she's still drinking without having eaten. She reassures him not to worry. She doesn't act out when she drinks since her alcohol tolerance is high. Haejun apologizes for the day she tried to repay him 2 million won out of the money, explaining that she doesn't usually shout like that. She admits she didn't intend to throw the envelope at him, it was supposed to be placed gently on the table. She apologizes again, saying that sometimes things don't go as planned, and Yihan agrees, noting that sometimes life takes unexpected turns. He excuses himself for a moment, believing she'll understand, and walks away. Haejun is concerned that his mother might approach her with questions if he leaves. However, Yihan is confident that she's always prepared for anything. While standing alone and having her drink, the chairman's mother approaches her and introduces herself again. Haejun turns around and responds to her introduction. Yihan's mother warmly expresses her gratitude to Haejun once more for her presence, and Haejun reciprocates by wishing her a happy birthday. His mother shares her initial disbelief that her son actually brought his girlfriend along and still finds it hard to believe. Haejun apologizes for not having prepared a gift, but his mother graciously accepts, stating that it's something she should have arranged. However, as Haejun continues to speak, the woman abruptly interrupts her because Haejun calls Chairman Seo by his first name, Yihan. His mother finds it endearing when she addresses her son as Yihan instead of Mr. Seo. Sniffling, she apologizes again and admits she doesn't understand why she's reacting this way, revealing that she never anticipated a day like this after giving birth to the chairman. She goes on to explain to Haejun that her son didn't move much in her stomach during pregnancy, making her think it was going to be a girl. However, she acknowledges that this is just how he is. She also mentions that her son rarely talks to her, and she didn't expect much for her birthday. Still, she'd never received a gift like this before. She expresses regret for not giving Haejun a proper greeting earlier due to the large number of people around. Then, she reaches for Haejun's hand and suggests they find a quieter place to continue their conversation. Yihan re-enters the scene and questions Haejun's ability to follow his mother anywhere. He reminds his mother that she initially stated she only wanted to see Haejun. However, he concedes that since she's made the journey, she might as well join them for a meal. The chairman states that situations can change, suggesting that she should refer to him as Yihan instead of Mr. Seo, given the informal setting. Haejun expresses gratitude and emphasizes that she never expected anything like this. Yihan, in a somewhat self-deprecating manner, remarks that he wonders what kind of employer she thought he would be, indicating he's not as bad as she might have imagined. He offers to escort her inside for a more comfortable dining experience, but she declines, explaining that she typically doesn't eat while sitting for extended periods. Standing in the operating room all day makes her legs restless when she sits too long, so she prefers to eat quickly to prepare for the next surgery. Yihan questions whether this means she only takes quick bites of food in the operating room, to which she responds by mentioning that she makes sure to visit the cafeteria when they serve pork cutlets. He gently reminds her that this isn't the operating room, so she need not rush. Haejun internally reflects that if her boss provides her with food, perhaps it won't be so bad after all. However, she quickly recalls her conversations with Oreo and Juno, both of whom expressed their feelings for her but were rejected. She admits she had contemplated dating one of them once things settled down a bit, unaware that someone else had already set their sights on her, the chairman, who is referred to as a wolf in her thoughts. Haejun informs Yihan that she has carefully laid out a schedule for both of them. Confused, he inquires about the specific schedule she is referencing while harboring curiosity about her intentions. She then discloses that she intends to secure 10 million won for the day, leaving them with a remaining balance of 66 million won. Consequently, this implies that they must meet at least 6 more times to fulfill their financial arrangement. Furthermore, she outlines that for the initial 3 meetings, they should front a keen interest in each other's company, but beginning with the 4th encounter, they should let the strain in their relationship manifest, owing to their clashing personalities. In response to her strategic approach, he commends her thoroughness, a quality he hadn't fully appreciated before. Intrigued, he asks her about what his mother might have disclosed to her. He expresses his certainty that she must have observed that his mother always operates with a hidden agenda, suggesting that she need not hold back in dealing with his mother. This prompts him to embark on a narrative about his mother, prompting Haejun to exclaim, asking if she genuinely gave birth to him. This abrupt outburst startles him, and she quickly issues an apology, clarifying that she didn't intend to be rude but merely sought to disregard any lingering rumors. Surprisingly, he responds by assuring her not to apologize, revealing that even he occasionally finds it difficult to believe she is his biological mother. They both clink their glasses, acknowledging the flavor of their drinks. Suddenly, Mr. Kong enters the scene, and the chairman wastes no time in querying whether his mother desires to learn more about Haejun or wishes to make arrangements to meet her again. Mr. Kong confirms that his mother is interested in both aspects and even suggests that she might invite them to the opening of Seomoon Gallery's new annex next week. The chairman promptly accepts the invitation and further inquires if his mother had inquired about Haejun's hospital schedule. He points out that his mother tends to exaggerate her ailments depending on the doctor's specialty. The chairman suggests that it might be more advantageous for the doctor to meet his mother in her capacity as the gallery owner, rather than as a patient. Turning to Haejun, the chairman anticipates her agreement, which she readily provides, believing that she has found a kindred spirit outside the confines of the operating room. Raising her glass, she extends a friendly gesture to the secretary and asks if she can address him as Mr. Kong. As the conversation continues, Haejun converses with the chairman's secretary while he stands by, pondering the unusual smile she now wears. She offers an apology to Mr. Kong for missing her fitting reservations earlier due to a surgery that overlapped with her schedule. Mr. Kong acknowledges her busy schedule as a doctor but requests that she inform him in advance if such conflicts arise in the future, so he can make necessary adjustments. The chairman, still lost in thought, ponders why his secretary appears to have so much information about his supposed girlfriend. He realizes that he is the only one aware of their arrangement and believes it's best for them to maintain a casual relationship. As Haejun asks the secretary for his phone number, the chairman decides it's an opportune moment to intervene. He comments on the champagne's bitterness and asks Mr. Kong to fetch a new bottle from the wine cellar. Although Haejun finds the champagne sweet, the chairman insists it's due to her limited knowledge of it. Without warning, he takes her phone, inputs his number, and hands it back to her, suggesting that she call him for any information she may need. The date wraps up, and Haejun finds herself back home, sitting alone. As she reflects on the moments from her time with Chairman Seo Yihan, she can't help but think that they've just started this journey together. She's also aware that she needs to come up with a strategy for dealing with her demanding employer. Meanwhile, at Yihan's place, he carefully goes through Haejun's resume and notices that she graduated at the top of her class from Hankook University. He comments that she's supposed to be smart, but in his opinion, she falls short, suggesting that maybe the standards at Hankook University aren't what they used to be. The next day, Haejun arrives at the hospital with a cheerful demeanor, and a colleague approaches her, asking if she's just gotten there. She confirms that she has and, filled with curiosity, asks if something exciting has happened. Playfully, he encourages her to take a guess about the nature of the news. After a few unsuccessful attempts at guessing, he hints at her empty stomach and suggests she grab some breakfast. Still curious, Haejun presses him to spill the beans about the good news, asking if it's even more exciting than a successful surgery. He responds with a smile, hinting that it's pretty close. Meanwhile, at the hospital's reception, the phone rings, and the receptionist is informed about the cafeteria's special offering of pork cutlets for the day. She assures the caller that she'll make her way there quickly, stressing the urgency because Chairman Seo Yihan will be leaving soon. Yihan emerges from his office, getting ready to leave, and the receptionist kindly offers to arrange a car for his return after lunch. In response, he playfully mentions an unexplored spot within the hospital that he plans to visit since he's working there now, a sly smirk on his face. In the bustling cafeteria, filled with hushed conversations and lively chatter, Haejun stands with two of her colleagues. Tension lingers as it becomes apparent that her colleagues are in a heated dispute, seemingly involving Haejun. However, amidst the chaos, there's an air of excitement as the cafeteria celebrates Pork Cutlet Day. Haejun seizes the opportunity to ask Mingguk if there was a recent case involving a congenital heart defect. Mingguk, in a positive tone, confirms such a case involving a 60-day-old female infant with an 8mm hole. Moreover, he mentions that the procedure went smoothly, even though Dr. Oh left after the initial phase, leaving him to handle a significant part of the surgery. Mingguk expresses newfound confidence in his abilities, and both he and Haejun feel a sense of pride. As they select their meals and head to their seats, they encounter Dr. Choi. Haejun reassures her colleagues, emphasizing that they've done nothing wrong. They continue to their seats, and Haejun asks about the patient who had surgery the previous day. While enjoying their meal, Juno joins them and playfully teases Haejun about her enthusiastic consumption of pork cutlets, likening it to a surgical procedure. Haejun warns Juno to stop teasing and join them at the table. Juno declines, siching departmental do cheese. Observing her colleagues devour their pork cutlets, Juno jokingly suggests that cardiothoracic surgery is intimidating. Haejun and others try to persuade him of the meal's quality, steering the conversation toward culinary delights and the hospital in general. Suddenly, someone indirectly alludes to Haejun's earlier point about exceptional food in unexpected settings. Juno apologizes for bringing it up, but Haejun seizes the moment to advocate for open-mindedness. She praises the quality of the meal, suggesting that such exquisite food should be served beyond the hospital cafeteria. Juno, in a playful manner, insists on ordering steak instead. Haejun counters, emphasizing the joy of relishing exceptional food in unexpected places. Her words resonate through the cafeteria, momentarily quieting the background chatter. An anonymous voice chimes in, giving examples of scenarios like a buffet at an internet cafe or a 5-course meal at a modest diner. Haejun, momentarily puzzled by the sudden silence, looks up and discovers the reason: the hospital's chairman, an unexpected presence in the employee cafeteria, illustrating the essence of her earlier statement. Yihan sits in his office, deep in thought, reminiscing about the moment when he told Haejun to contact him. Just as he's about to leave his office to meet her, he unexpectedly overhears her actively discussing the topic of pork cutlets. This is how he became aware of this intriguing topic today, and curiosity seems to have spread throughout the cafeteria, leaving everyone puzzled about the chairman's presence there. But that's not all. The chairman takes a seat at Dr. Choi's table, conveniently located near Haejun's table. He calmly dismisses the receptionist, claiming he can manage his afternoon schedule on his own. Dr. Choi, sitting beside him, sees this as a rare honor to share a meal with the chairman and, perhaps, an opportunity as well. He secretly hopes that Haejun won't interfere with her heart transplant center affairs, even though she appears unusually silent today. Dr. Choi can't help but feel that Haejun is a perpetual source of trouble, yet she continues to exude confidence, making him wonder why the chairman is so fixated on her. Finally breaking the silence, Dr. Choi starts to inquire if the chairman is enjoying his meal. In response, Yihan praises the food, declaring it so good that it almost makes one forget their duties. This encourages Dr. Choi to continue his meal with a sense of relief, hoping he isn't causing any disturbance. Seizing the opportunity, Dr. Choi shares with the chairman his desire to visit his office for a conversation. He acknowledges that their initial meeting didn't end on the best note and feels they failed to adequately represent their department's true nature. He asserts that despite the occasional chaos, their department usually operates smoothly, with everyone adhering to Jaeil Hospital's standards. Yihan expresses his previous concern about Dr. Choi, pointing out that he appears to lag behind his peers, evident from the statistics within his department. Moreover, he was worried that the doctor might be dealing with an undisclosed ailment, though he appears to be in good health and understanding. Before Dr. Choi can respond, the chairman interrupts, expressing relief that he isn't the supposed, very special person he had in mind. After conveying his thoughts, Chairman Seo Yihan encourages Dr. Choi to finish his meal before it gets cold, remarking that the food exceeded his expectations. Dr. Choi reveals that he had been contemplating scheduling a meeting with the chairman to discuss various ideas. The chairman promptly invites him to reach out whenever he has something to discuss. He emphasizes that Dr. Choi should feel free to contact him, whether it's about future plans or even the smallest of inquiries. Regrettably, Dr. Choi admits he doesn't have the chairman's contact information. Yihan then says that only those with his number should call him, a subtle hint for Haejun to reach out, as his comment is intentionally loud enough for her to hear. With that, Yihan departs. In the next scene, Yihan has gone to meet with Haejun, passing through the garden area and the back door. He's beginning to think that she enjoys these kinds of places. As he strolls, lost in his thoughts, she rushes up and grabs him, urgently instructing him to enter quickly before someone spots him. However, he appears unbothered by the potential consequences because this is his hospital, and there's nowhere he can't go. Haejun remarks that she's confident it won't have any repercussions for him if they're caught. On the contrary, she expresses her hope to remain at the hospital for an extended period, reminding him of his promise to keep their relationship a secret from everyone here. This leads her to question his decision to come to the cafeteria in such a manner, to which he counters by asking if that was the sole reason for their meeting. Nevertheless, she clarifies that she just wanted to emphasize that she's not planning to run away from her responsibilities and will repay her debt, urging him not to make surprise visits like this again. Moreover, he has observed previously how diligently she worked the other night, prompting him to inquire why she didn't speak up earlier if she always works so diligently. He then proceeds to ask her about Dr. Choi's apparent opposition toward her. She responds by explaining that Dr. Choi has always been like that, and there's nothing she can do to change his opinion. She adds that there's nothing she could say that would alter his perspective, so it's better to refrain from trying. She reveals her belief that Dr. Choi's behavior stems from the chairman's presumed disapproval of their department due to her involvement. Consequently, she questions the chairman about his bad mood, wondering why he would waste his time and energy in such a state. As he contemplates whether his recent edginess is due to her failure to call or her inability to speak in front of Dr. Choi, he realizes that it's definitely because of her. However, he chooses to conceal his irritation, claiming he was never angry, and asks her why she intended to call him. In response, she explains that it pertains to their upcoming plans. She expresses concern that since their next date is at a gallery owned by his mother, and Mr. Kong mentioned there will be fewer guests, the chairman's mother will likely ask her more questions. She inquires about what she should say if people inquire about how they met. Instead of providing a response, the chairman furrows his brow in thought. Thus, she knew that he'd react this way and proceeded to offer two versions of the story, a simple one and a more clandestine one, asking for his preference. However, it becomes evident that the chairman may not have a choice in the matter, so she opts for the straightforward version. Out of curiosity, he asks her about the clandestine version, and she begins explaining that on his first day at the hospital, he saw her and couldn't take his eyes off her. She suggests that he was so captivated by her presence that it began affecting his work, and he was willing to do anything to win her over. He interrupts her, in disbelief, and questions whether she truly believes he would act in such a manner because of her. Back at the cafeteria, Haejun's colleagues begin to wonder where she's gone, especially since she didn't finish her pork cutlets. They've noticed she's been acting a bit strangely lately, often lost in her thoughts. They speculate that the recent incident with the runaway patient might still be on her mind, though they note that such matters have never affected her this profoundly, given her typically strong disposition. Returning to the conversation between Yihan and Haejun, he inquires if she believes her actions influenced his recent behavior, but she clarifies that it was just an example she had in mind. He ponders whether this is the reason for her recent lack of communication. She explains that she has been contemplating how to align her actions with the chairman's preferences and demonstrate her trustworthiness. She also expresses her intention to prove the worth of CS once she has settled her debt. In the midst of their conversation, she reaches into her pocket and hands him a copy of their contract. However, he defers examining it until later. Yihan mentions his upcoming afternoon commitments and expresses his desire to leave, but she persuades him to stay a moment longer. She reminds him that there remains a balance of 66 million won after deducting 10 million won for his mother's birthday, and she requires his signature to proceed. Despite her plea, he promptly departs before any further action can be taken. Upon returning home, Yihan reviews the contract and concludes that while it may appear decent at first glance, it necessitates substantial revisions. He's relieved that he didn't have to review it on the spot and mock her, but he finds the situation intriguing. His phone rings suddenly, and it's Mr. Kong, his secretary, calling to inform him that he will be accompanying the chairman to the gallery. Yihan initially dismisses the need for such an arrangement, but Mr. Kong explains that he has heard rumors of the chairman's aunt flying in from the US to attend the event. He inquires whether it would be suitable for both Yihan's mother and aunt to be present, to which Yihan assures him that it will be fine. Apparently, Yihan's aunt has had 3 marriages and numerous romantic scandals, and she persists in pressuring him to get married. Mr. Kong suspects that the aunt's primary motive for attending is to meet Haejun, which could pose a challenge for the doctor. Consequently, he offers to accompany them to the event. The chairman instructs him to make sure their outfits are prepared for the day. Mr. Kong senses a distinct chilliness in the chairman's demeanor and reflects that he hasn't felt this way since the day they first met. Yihan's aunt has never been one to simply let things be. She possesses a keen instinct, which, at times, can be quite bothersome. She has earned herself the reputation of a marriage of convenience finder. There was a time when she bombarded him with an endless stream of blind dates, firmly believing that everyone has a soulmate out there. As they arrive at their destination, they spot Haejun, who has already made her presence known with a beaming smile. Yihan quickly recalls a conversation they had when she mentioned her thoroughness and even sought his opinion on what outfit to wear. They finally reach their destination, and Yihan turns to his secretary to inquire if today's event will resemble the last one. Mr. Kong explains that while many employees from the company attended his mother's birthday celebration, today's event is more of an intimate gathering with close acquaintances. The secretary assures him that there will be individuals from his mother's social circle and their children present. He wonders if Haejun will be comfortable, to which she responds that she will be just fine. As she spots him arriving, she mentions that she has just arrived herself and greeted a few people, although no one has delved into any personal details yet. She expresses relief, as she had been somewhat apprehensive about experiencing the kind of drama she often sees on TV. When he inquires about the nature of these dramas, she explains that in them, people at chaebol parties often dig into each other's backgrounds and question why certain individuals are even present. Surprised, he asks her about the dramas she's been watching, and she clarifies that she's not the viewer but knows someone who is. She goes on to reveal that everyone has been quite welcoming since her arrival. He extends his hand to her and mentions that the reason people are treating her kindly is because of her association with him. He then proceeds to inform her about one person she should be cautious of, his younger brother, Seo Yihan. Haejun admits she can't recall his face since she only saw him once during his hospital visit. Yihan suggests that it's perhaps better that way. Slightly bothered, she urges him to explain what his brother is like, but he interrupts her, saying that she'll find out when she meets him. He emphasizes that getting close to his brother will only lead to trouble, and if she encounters him, she should avoid engaging with him. He advises her not to respond to any of his brother's questions and to refrain from smiling at him. Haejun agrees to limit her interactions with Yihan as much as possible. She expresses her wish that Yihan should have been more upfront with her from the beginning, as her anxiety grew, and she meticulously planned everything, envisioning it like a scene from a romantic drama. Little did she anticipate that it would proceed so seamlessly. Yihan holds hope that the situation continues this way, emphasizing the unpredictability of life. He assures her that she will soon discover the truth. He also advises her that his mother will be arriving shortly and cautions her not to overdo it. In response, she seeks guidance on how to gauge if she is indeed going overboard. He then offers a simple solution, to mimic the actions of their previous date, assuring her that things will go smoothly. As his mother enters, Accompanied by another lady, Haejun inquires about the lady's identity, remarking on their striking resemblance. He responds, asserting that the lady is precisely the type of person she had been anticipating. Although he admits to not having watched the dramas she mentioned, he is confident that this lady meets her expectations. He leans closer and asks if she would appreciate a special treat today. Meanwhile, his aunt confides in his mother, suggesting that Yihan may be concealing the truth and that she truly doesn't know her son. His mother recalls that he did introduce Haejun to her at her birthday party, which initially quells her doubts. His aunt, however, remains convinced that Yihan was vigilantly monitoring the situation, ready to intervene should the need arise, to avoid any falsehoods. His mother queries why she speaks ill of her own son, to which the aunt responds by recounting Yihan's past behavior, noting his harshness whenever she introduced him to someone. She assures his mother that she, with her extensive experience of walking down the aisle 3 times, will be able to discern the truth when she meets both Yihan and Haejun. His mother, anxious to avoid hasty decisions, implores the aunt to scrutinize the couple closely so that she can gauge the seriousness of their relationship before making any future plans. When Yihan's mother and aunt approach them, his aunt notices something different about him and says, this isn't the Yihan she used to know. Seo Yihan greets his aunt warmly and tells her that he's glad to see that she's the same as ever. She stares at him deeply, and despite his occasional annoying tendencies, she can't deny the fact that he's handsome. So Haejun introduces herself to his aunt. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Juno informs Oreo that Haejun has already left because she says she has plans for today. Oreo tries to inquire who she's meeting, but Juno tells him to worry about himself since he has a class trio today, thinking to himself, this isn't something they should just gloss over. Back at the gallery, Yihan's aunt introduces herself, and Haejun says she has heard a lot about her. She tells his aunt that she sees a striking resemblance between her and Yihan. Aunt Haejun, gazing at them, thinks inwardly that her nephew managed to find a good one. She asks Haejun how they met, thinking it might startle her. Haejun explains that the chairman visited the hospital as a patient one day, and they ended up exchanging phone numbers while discussing something. From there, things progressed further. His aunt asks why he chose to visit Seomoon Jaeil Hospital out of all the hospitals and inquires about Haejun's department in the hospital. When she replies that she's a cardiothoracic surgeon, Aunt Haejun thinks she has finally caught her in a lie. But Haejun immediately adds that he was there for his mom. According to her, he said his mother was suffering from heart arrhythmia, and her family had a history of it. So he always worried so much about his mother that he'd call her several times to ask about her. We learn that Haejun based her facts on the way his mom grasps at her heart, quite often struggles with palpitations, and has trouble breathing. Aunt Haejun is surprised by all she just heard. She never thought her nephew cared so much about his mom. She applauds Haejun, telling her that she's impressive while hoping that Yihan isn't boring her since she knows he isn't that affectionate. Haejun tries defending him, saying that he may be a man of few words, but he immediately completes her statement before his aunt notices that she has no idea how to finish it. He wraps his hand around his supposed girlfriend while calming her down, saying he's sure they wouldn't mind a bit of PDA. Nonetheless, his aunt is still not entirely convinced. Haejun heads to the restroom, her thoughts consumed by the bonus offer Yihan gave her. She's elated, and her cheeks flush with happiness. She can't help but admire how observant Aunt Haejun is, almost like the female version of Seo Yihan himself. She silently applauds herself for handling the curveball thrown her way. While pondering Yihan's aunt, she vividly recalls the moment he wrapped his arm around her. With confidence, she pats her shoulder, reassuring herself not to be fazed by such gestures. After all, there's still a long way to go until the contract is completed. As she exits the bathroom, she encounters a lady who greets her. Meanwhile, Aunt Haejun confronts Yihan about the act he's putting on, but he insists that he and Haejun are genuinely dating. She mentions hearing about the bet between him and his mom, questioning whether it's worth all the trouble. He denies knowledge of what she's talking about. She reminds him that they're doing everything for his sake, despite how he may perceive it. She emphasizes her role as his mother's only sister and raises concerns about his distant behavior towards her, suggesting he may need her assistance one day. She then asks why he's not expecting Haejun to be present like a princess. He argues that she's a grown adult and can handle herself. However, he wonders why she's taking so long. His aunt mentions the room being filled with people living off his family's wealth, possibly explaining his nonchalant attitude. She also alludes to people who neither depend on his family's money nor particularly like him, hinting at potential issues with Haejun. Yihan curiously asks why they would target her, and she returns the question, questioning why he has so many enemies. He contemplates this briefly before rushing off in search of Haejun. Back at the hospital, Haejun's colleagues speculate about her whereabouts, glad she's taking some time off. While they argue, Dr. Kim Junho enters and inquires if anything is amiss with Haejun. They downplay the situation, claiming nothing happened. However, they remark on her dressing up and mistakenly assume she might be attending a hospital event with Junho, which turns out to be incorrect. Junho wonders where she could have gone to spark such rumors. The lady Haejun encounters recognizes her from before and greets her. She mentions hearing about Haejun's relationship with Mr. Seo and introduces herself as Joo Hae-in of Juhan Bank. Other people start approaching Haejun, and the atmosphere becomes tense as they bombard her with multiple questions in an attempt to unsettle her. However, Haejun remains remarkably composed. She explains that her parents run a small store outside Seoul, a fact she has no intention of hiding. They imply that people tend to stick to their own social circles in such places. One girl even mentions Yihan's calculated nature. This conversation stirs memories for Haejun. Growing increasingly irritated, Haejun observes that these girls have pretty faces but are spewing ugly words. Suddenly, Yuhan arrives, initially believing art galleries are for selling art, but he realizes they can also be places for healing hearts. One girl informs Yuhan that he's misunderstood. She explains they've known each other since childhood, and she was only asking Haejun because she didn't recognize her. Yuhan asks if she's unaware that speaking like that in a Seomoon gallery implies having more money than others. As they converse, Haejun recalls Yihan's advice to avoid his brother, recognizing the attributes he mentioned. They shake hands and introduce themselves. Joo Hae-in suggests Yihan is immature, but Haejun's response implies that she doesn't appreciate their behavior. She emphasizes that mentioning her workplace isn't about family status but confidence in her abilities. Annoyed, Hae-in raises her glasses to strike Haejun, but they fall to the ground. In a surprising turn of events, Yuhan heroically throws himself in to shield Haejun from the flying glass, cutting his hand in the process. The room instantly buzzes with whispers and chatter as people try to make sense of what just happened. Without missing a beat, Dr. Yoon Haejun swiftly instructs the girls to call for an ambulance. Just then, Seo Yihan barrels into the room, mistakenly thinking his brother is trying to stage a spectacle in front of the guests. Yuhan becomes visibly emotional as he pleads with his brother, assuring him that he didn't intentionally cause any trouble. Meanwhile, Haejun calmly attends to Yuhan, doing his best to stabilize him while they wait for help to arrive. Haejun gently gets Yuhan to lie down and instructs him to move his fingers. Yihan calls out to him, hesitating for a moment, before asking her what he can do to help. He reaches out and gently removes his tie, intending to use it as a makeshift tourniquet. With a calming voice, he instructs Yuhan to hold his hand up high. Before long, the wailing sirens of the ambulance fill the air. As the EMTs rush in, Haejun takes charge, guiding them on what needs to be done. All the while, Yihan's mother and Aunt Haejun look on, shocked and worried. In the midst of the chaos, Yihan's mother turns to Haejun, asking for a handkerchief just like she gave Haejun. But Haejun remains silent, leaving Yihan's mother surprised. She questions Haejun, wondering if she's rattled by the incident, contrary to her usually cool demeanor. Haejun dismisses her, stating that she's not easily affected. She then poses a hypothetical question about Yihan and Haejun being together. Yihan's mother, a little taken aback, asks if Haejun doesn't trust the boys. She confidently expresses her belief in Yihan and Haejun, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Haejun simply tells the mother that it's okay for her to hold on to hope and walks away, leaving them with a cryptic statement hinting that she might have misjudged the situation. As Haejun heads towards the ambulance, she reassures Yuhan, promising him he'll be alright. With his uninjured hand, Yuhan gently grabs her sleeve, expressing a genuine wish to get to know her better. He begins to invite her to share a meal with him post-stitches, but Yihan quickly intervenes. In a heated tone, he challenges Yuhan to finish his sentence, then firmly instructs him to let go of Haejun. Yuhan, taken aback by Yihan's sudden appearance, hesitates as Yihan continues to glower at him. Eventually, he releases Haejun, announcing his departure. Yihan retorts, suggesting he makes himself scarce, while Haejun looks on, puzzled by his brother's reaction. Following this, the EMTs whisk Yuhan away. Haejun starts to leave too, but pauses when Yihan calls out to her. She turns around and reassures Yihan not to worry. Yihan, however, replies that he'll worry if he chooses to. Misunderstanding his concern, Haejun assumes Yihan is troubled about his younger brother's injury. Still, Yihan quickly clarifies that his worry isn't for Yuhan, leaving Haejun wondering if Yihan wasn't upset about his brother's mishap. Haejun then begins to apologize for the earlier commotion, explaining that she didn't mean to stir up drama and had tried to ignore the girls. Still, Yihan interrupts her, assuring her that she has nothing to apologize for. Yihan gently reminds Haejun that she's not just a guest at this gathering, but his partner. A wave of relief washes over her. He isn't upset. He encourages her to tread more carefully, and she nods, mentally noting the pending invoice that needs his signature. She expresses her relief that his brother's injury wasn't severe and empathizes with the scare his mother must have had. As Yihan's gaze drifts toward his mother, who's in conversation with his aunt, he shares a family philosophy with Haejun: if it's not right in front of them, it doesn't exist. This makes her ponder, could it be that this family has no hidden secrets? She excuses herself, intending to freshen up, but Yihan catches her hand, halting her. How can he let her wander off alone again after what happened? Haejun assures him she isn't stirring trouble, only making it harder for him to release her. He fusses with her sleeve, silence enveloping them. She looks at him, holding on to the hand he just let go. They both break the silence simultaneously, but Haejun gives Yihan the floor. He apologizes for the earlier incident, recalling Aunt Haejun's concern about how the disgruntled guests might treat Haejun. He admits he underestimated the situation and promises to keep a tighter leash next time if only she would share what the ladies said to her. To his surprise, Haejun shrugs it off, saying she's fine. He questions her, puzzled. How could she be okay with it? She laughs, asking him if he truly believes she's upset. She explains she's unaffected because she's not in love with him. Whispering in his ear, she tells him only a woman in love would be bothered by such petty squabbles. Yihan's fist clenches, a sense of disappointment seeping in. No one has ever spoken to him quite like this before. Yihan replays Haejun's words in his mind, each repetition irritating him further. Haejun attempts to continue the conversation, but he stops her midway, assuring her he gets it. His glare is icy as it meets hers. He suggests they head back indoors, but Haejun interjects, inquiring about her deserved bonus. The question brings him to a standstill, and he regards her curiously, likening her to a determined seal. She reminds him of his promise, a handsome bonus of 10 million won if she successfully navigated his aunt's event. Nonchalantly, he confirms that she'll receive it. Gratitude washes over her, she trusts his word. Yet, she can't shake off the feeling that he seems annoyed. Curiously, she asks him if it's about the tie. Despite his denial, she insists she will cover the cost. As she begins to retreat, she declares her willingness to pay for the tie, seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen their business ties using her bonus money. She throws a casual question over her shoulder, wondering aloud about the cost of the tie. His reply, 10 million won, leaves her stunned. She whirls around to face him, accusing him of joking, but his response is stern: he never jokes about money. With that, he strides away, leaving her with the revelation that her bonus will neatly cover the expensive tie. Later that night, Yihan stands under the cascading water in his apartment shower, lost in thought. Haejun's words echo in his mind, her declaration of not being in love with him. He can't help but wonder, does she not even like him? The next day, Haejun is in her own world, oblivious to the world around her. Dr. Kim Juno's voice barely registers in her mind, only breaking through when he raises his voice. He quizzes her about her unusual behavior and lack of appetite. She glances at the food before her, but the thought of eating feels redundant. She's already filled to the brim with debts. Juno slides into a seat next to one of their colleagues across from Haejun and teases her about possibly having another patient on the lam. Haejun, in turn, throws him a curveball question: is he a man? His playful response hints at her finally acknowledging him as such. He tries to add more quips to lighten the mood, but Haejun interrupts him, asking him if it's possible for a tie to cost 10 million won. This question confuses Juno. She elaborates, her voice gaining volume with each word. As a man, he must buy ties, right? How could a tie cost a whopping 10 million won? Juno, taken aback by the sudden outburst, asks why she's yelling. In reply, she demands an answer to her question. He confesses that he's clueless, admitting that he sometimes still wears elastic ties. He can't fathom how a tie could be so pricey, even if it were encrusted with jewels. Hearing this, Haejun's spirits lift momentarily. But they plummet again when Juno adds that he supposes such ludicrously priced ties might exist in the world of chaebols. This revelation triggers tears, leaving Juno flustered. He quickly guides her away from prying eyes in the cafeteria while their colleague left behind speculates about what could have caused such an emotional outburst from Haejun. As they make their way out of the cafeteria, they bump into Chansung and his group of interns. Chansung saunters over to Haejun, casually inquiring if she just had lunch. She affirms while Juno grumbles under his breath about his apparent invisibility. Chansung brushes past Juno's comment, asking Haejun about her upcoming surgery. This obvious dismissal irks Juno further. Haejun attempts to respond, but Chansung interjects, advising her to delegate more tasks to her interns. Without missing a beat, he pivots towards his own group of interns, introducing them to Haejun as old schoolmates. The interns greet her warmly, and she reciprocates despite Juno's simmering annoyance. Chansung then extends an invitation for lunch to Haejun, but she graciously declines, assuring him she's fine. He probes her refusal, jokingly questioning if she still thinks he harbors feelings for her. He then laughs it off, denying any lingering emotions. As she begins to reiterate her refusal, he cuts her off, explaining that his interns are eager to hear about their med school days. He adds, "Aren't they friends?" Juno rolls his eyes internally at this, thinking, here we go again. Chansung insists that, as friends, they should share a meal and reminisce about their internship days. Haejun politely declines, citing her busy schedule. Undeterred, Chansung assures her he won't misconstrue their lunch as anything more. Haejun playfully retorts that she might misinterpret it, excusing herself from the conversation. Juno trails after her, grumbling about Chansung's unchanging ways and labeling him a jerk, which earns them a glare from Chansung. Juno vents his disbelief that Chansung is still pursuing Haejun despite her repeated rejections. He suspects that Chansung joined Jaeil Hospital solely because of her. He recalls how Haejun once expressed her desire to remain friends with Chansung, and now he uses the friendship card at every opportunity. Juno also mentions hearing that Chansung is quite wealthy. To this, Haejun quips that his bank balance must certainly exceed 78 million won. Juno, while empathizing with her predicament, can't help but ask if she's still preoccupied with the topic. Juno then escorts Haejun into a vacant room, offering her a seat. He suggests that she could always seek donations from Hankook University Hospital. In response, she playfully retorts that he might as well set up a donation tin next to her sleeping bag when she's homeless. Juno hands her a lollipop in her favorite flavor, trying to coax out what's really troubling her. He's confident it isn't just about the money. However, Haejun remains silent, haunted by Yihan's pained expression from the night before, wondering if she could have hurt him. Juno urges her to open up, hoping to lend a helping hand. However, she skillfully changes the subject, citing a patient waiting for her as she stands. Juno teases her about seeming like the only one working in her department, but she counters that she only has outpatient appointments lined up. Stretching, she declares her intention to earn more and pay off her debt. As she makes to leave, Juno recalls something he wanted to share with her. Haejun, in jest, tells him to save it unless it's about money. He confirms that it is and informs her about a new VIP ward in the works. At that same moment, we find Yihan gazing out his office window, lost in thought over Haejun's words. He understands her stance on not mixing business with pleasure, yet he can't decipher his own feelings. The planning director presents him with the ward plans, sharing his opinion about assigning fellows instead of residents to act like family doctors. Yihan replies with biting sarcasm, highlighting the unrealistic expectations of making overworked people cater to VIP patients. The man stammers, clarifying that he intended the fellows to be compensated for their additional work, but doubts many would willingly take on such a load for little extra pay. Yihan's mind immediately drifts to Haejun, though he keeps his thoughts to himself. Before leaving, the man assures Yihan that he'll iron out the details to align them with other hospitals. He pops back in after a few moments, letting Yihan know about a guest waiting for him. At the mention of a guest, Yihan's interest is piqued. Then, Yihan walks in. Earlier, the planning director had exited Yihan's office, his mind churning with thoughts. He'd been trying to curry favor with Chairman Seo Yihan, but so far, his attempts had been less than successful. His initiative to create an indoor garden, inspired by Yihan's mother's love for flowers, hadn't drawn as much as a single visit from Yihan. Just when he was losing hope, he spotted Yihan waiting outside. A bright idea sparked in his mind, surely Yihan would be pleased to see his only brother. He couldn't help but view this as a golden opportunity. However, reality didn't quite align with his expectations. Upon entering, Yihan is greeted not with a warm smile, but a cold glare from Yihan. Yihan reminds him, none too gently, that he'd sworn to cut ties if Yihan dared approach him or his office again. Seeing his golden opportunity crumble, the man feels a pang of disappointment. Yihan, maintaining his professional demeanor, firmly instructs Yihan to vacate his office. He's met with Yihan's protest as he presents his injured hand, pleading his case as a patient in need. But Yihan remains resolute, reiterating his request for his brother to leave. However, Yihan isn't backing down as he shares his near-death experience from the night of his injury and how he's only just regained use of his hand. He questions Yihan's apparent lack of hospitality towards his only sibling. Yihan, however, deflects with a dash of sarcasm, quizzing Yihan on his understanding of the term inhospitable, which elicits a pout from his younger brother. Switching gears, Yihan probes Yihan about his motive for this visit. He preempts any financial requests, suggesting that if money is what he's after, he'd better keep dreaming, but Yihan clarifies his intentions, stating that he's there to extend an opportunity to Yihan. Yihan then unveils his grand proposal. He wants Yihan to act as his guardian. Given his minor status, he requires a guardian for his appointments. As Yihan starts to respond, Yihan interjects, requesting to be escorted to cardiothoracic surgery. This catches Yihan's attention. With newfound confidence, Yihan emphasizes the unique nature of his offer, one that only a sibling could extend, the honor of serving as his guardian. Several hours later, Haejun finds herself sitting across from Yihan, trying to explain that he's wandered into the wrong department. He tells her he's read that the large arteries around the wrist are all connected to the heart. As she remains silent, he adds that he's been feeling a strange tingling sensation from his fingertips right up to his heart. He wants to ensure it's nothing serious. Haejun thinks his reasoning is somewhat plausible, but also a bit far-fetched. She glances at Yihan, who is quietly observing the conversation, hoping he might chime in as Yihan's guardian. When Yihan continues his silence, she reassures them both that Yihan's hand injury has no connection to his heart. Yihan questions her certainty, and Yihan jests that if she were to examine Yihan closely, she'd surely find something amiss. Haejun playfully chides him for his remark, thinking him as frosty as ever. His only response is to echo her words back with a questioning look. She turns back to Yihan, assuring him he's fine. Yihan then starts to describe his symptoms: anxiety, sweating, breathlessness, and a feeling like his heart is about to stop. This catches Haejun's attention. She asks him when these symptoms occur, and he confesses they usually happen when his brother is on his tail, all the while avoiding Yihan's icy stare. Haejun decides to use her stethoscope to check his heartbeat and instructs him to lift his shirt. Yihan complies, blushing slightly while Yihan grinds his teeth, visibly irritated by the situation and questioning his decision to be here. Haejun listens to Yihan's heartbeat, finding nothing unusual, while Yihan steals a glance at Yihan, smirking as he wonders if his brother's jealousy is causing him discomfort. Haejun informs Yihan that his heart rate is slightly elevated, to which an annoyed Yihan thinks somewhat dramatically that Yihan deserves a dose of karma. Sensing the tension, Haejun inquires if there's any issue between them. They both deny it simultaneously, raising her suspicions, but she decides not to press further. Instead, she thanks Yuhan for his help that fateful night, causing Yihan to flinch, but Yuhan corrects her, saying it was she who saved him. As she apologizes for the incident, he dismisses her apology, blaming it on the bank lady. He then invites her out for dinner as a token of his gratitude, but she promises to join him next time as she's swamped at the moment. Undeterred, Yuhan insists she comes to dinner, mentioning a fantastic restaurant nearby. When she asks what kind of restaurant it is, he simply grins and says, "Tteokbokki." Yuhan keeps nudging Haejun for the dinner date when Yihan suddenly breaks the tension with a shout of his younger brother's name, shooting him a stern glare. He thanks Haejun for her time, adding an awkward note to the atmosphere. Haejun stands, hesitating, while Yihan busies himself with his phone. Yuhan observes them, speculating about their relationship status, given their inability to maintain eye contact. Breaking the silence, Haejun brings up the topic of the VIP ward with Yihan, who suggests they discuss it later. She insists on addressing it immediately due to the looming deadline. Yihan, however, pleads busyness and hunger, leading Yuhan to quip about his brother's frosty demeanor being the reason he's still single. Seeing no way out, Yihan invites Haejun to join them for dinner to discuss the matter. She reminds him of his earlier claim of being too busy, to which he coolly responds that everyone has to eat. Throughout the exchange, Yuhan squirms in his chair, observing the duo closely. When Yihan announces they'll be having pork cutlets for dinner, Yuhan is shocked, thinking his brother has completely lost it. After some persuasion, Haejun blushes and finally agrees to join them, leaving the room to fetch her coat. At the restaurant, Haejun thoughtfully cuts Yuhan's food into bite-sized pieces to accommodate his injured hand. During the meal, Yuhan curiously asks his brother how he discovered the place, and Yihan explains that Haejun is a fan of pork cutlets and inquires if she's enjoying the meal. She compares it favorably to the hospital cafeteria food, surprising Yuhan, who had no idea hospital food could be so tasty. Yuhan then offers Haejun a gift as a token of gratitude for saving his life. She declines the gift but requests the tie he used as a makeshift bandage. Yihan shoots her a surprised glance, while Yuhan admits he threw the tie away, leading to Haejun's imagined bonus money flying out the window. As they continue eating, Yihan surprises his brother by sharing some of his food with him, prompting Yuhan to mentally exclaim in delight. The conversation then shifts to Haejun's career choice, and she confides that she chose cardiothoracic surgery due to a promise she made, regardless of whether the person she made it to remembers it or not. She looks at Yihan, assuring him that promises are meant to be kept, even if they might seem foolish to others. Yihan assures her that he doesn't find it strange and believes her, causing her to blush and her heart to flutter. After a satisfying meal, Yihan reaches for the bill, displaying the classic corporate charm. Just as Haejun starts to voice a question, he playfully shushes her, nodding toward Yuhan and jesting about his uncanny ability to eavesdrop. Right on cue, Yuhan pipes up from behind, teasingly questioning their awkward standoff, given their dating status. Haejun swiftly rebuts his presumption with a light-hearted quip about their not-so-awkward dynamics. As they prepare to leave, Yuhan announces a detour to a nearby store. He pleads with them to wait, to which Yihan issues a mock warning that they won't hesitate to leave him behind if he takes too long. Once Yuhan is out of earshot, Yihan turns to Haejun, offering her a free pass to vent about Yuhan if she wishes. Haejun, however, seems perplexed, asking why she would want to badmouth him. Yihan shrugs, admitting it's something he tends to do quite often. An awkward silence follows, prompting Haejun to break the ice. She musters the courage to ask Yihan about any potential compensation for babysitting Yuhan. Yihan, anticipating her question, cuts her off, confirming there's no paycheck involved. This doesn't surprise her, yet she confesses she felt obliged to agree since Yuhan is, after all, just a kid. As they stroll in silence, Yihan senses Haejun has more to ask. He nudges her to speak up, and she hesitates before finally voicing her thoughts. She remarks on how the rumors about Yihan and Yuhan's strained relationship might just be hearsay, given how Yihan had shared his food with Yuhan earlier. She adds that the two brothers seem quite similar, much to Yihan's chagrin. He immediately refutes her statement, adamant about their dissimilarities. Haejun insists they're alike, attributing the differences to their significant age gap. Yihan reluctantly confirms that he is indeed 16 years older than Yihan. Haejun then shares her initial expectations of their relationship. She had imagined them as stereotypical rich heirs, constantly at loggerheads, much like a dramatic fight for the crown in a soap opera. Yihan, in his typical corporate demeanor, gazes at Haejun for a moment before shouting out to Yihan, who is across the street. The sudden outburst startles Haejun, causing her to instinctively reach for Yihan's arm. Yihan, with an air of casual curiosity, asks Yihan what he would do if he were told that Haejun could take over the Seomoon group. Yihan, ever the jester, hollers back about transforming it into a full-blown entertainment agency. Turning back to Haejun, Yihan gives her a knowing look, introducing her to the wild imagination of his brother. As Haejun attempts to disentangle herself from his arm, Yihan playfully tightens his grip, reminding her of Yihan's sharp observational skills. Yihan soon returns, announcing his next shopping spree for focaccia bread since the previous store had run out. Once Yihan is out of earshot again, Yihan reassures Haejun that his family isn't harboring any dark secrets, hoping this answers her question. Haejun withdraws her hand from his arm, admitting she might have misunderstood their relationship due to Yihan's seemingly indifferent attitude towards Yihan. She muses aloud about their striking physical resemblance yet contrasting personalities, describing Yihan as the more jovial and playful one. Yihan grumbles about Yihan's carefree demeanor, confessing it irks him to see his own face so devoid of seriousness. Haejun can't help but burst into laughter at this, attempting to stifle it behind her hand. However, Yihan notices her amusement and, caught up in the moment, asks her why she doesn't like him. Haejun feigns deafness, leading Yihan to remind her of their unfinished conversation from before. He brings up the time when he asked her if she had something special to share with him, and he repeats his question. Haejun, caught off guard, finally confesses that she had planned to warn him not to fall for her, as it tends to happen quite often. Just then, Yihan appears with his coveted focaccia bread, providing Haejun with the perfect distraction. She greets Yihan enthusiastically, engaging him in a conversation about the bread, while Yihan watches her, wishing she had been more upfront with him from the start. The next day, we see Yihan engrossed in a mountain of books in the study room of his family's residence. His father walks in, a hint of surprise in his voice as he notes Yihan's unusual interest in the study, considering his infrequent visits. He reminds Yihan that he had already taken all his books the previous year. Yihan responds casually, mentioning he was just checking if there were any remnants of his grandfather's belongings. His father points out that it's been ages since his grandfather passed, and they've sorted through everything already. He adds that Yihan might have taken some items, and the rest could be in the company archives. Curious, he asks Yihan what he's searching for. Yihan shrugs off the question, making his way out of the study, only to halt at his father's mention of a call from the head of Juhan Bank regarding a minor incident at the gallery opening. Yihan rolls his eyes at the understatement, recalling how the incident resulted not only in Yihan getting injured but also in a barrage of hateful words from the bank head's daughter. He remembers Haejun brushing off her own hurt with an "I'm okay," causing him to marvel at her resilience. His father advises him to keep personal matters separate from business, to which Yihan agrees. He then requests his father to scout reliable individuals for the VIP ward. His father brings up an upcoming surgery for an Arab royal, stressing the potential complications if things don't go smoothly. Yihan reassures him with a confident smile, hinting at someone he knows who never fails to give their best. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Haejun is lost in thought as she navigates past her colleagues, oblivious to their presence. She's preoccupied with Yihan's reaction when she had shared the promise she made regarding her career choice. So deep in her musings, she doesn't even notice Juno's frantic waving until he's right beside her. One glance at Juno's disheveled appearance has her jokingly asking him to keep his distance lest he hurt her eyes. Juno, accustomed to her playful banter, reaches into his pocket and hands her an envelope filled with cash. With a sheepish grin, he confesses that this is all he has since the recent stock market setback has left him a little strapped for cash. Haejun, overwhelmed by his generosity, jokingly threatens to plant a kiss on him for being the best. With a gleeful smile, she counts the cash, a total of 470,061, and thanks him sincerely before heading off. He trails behind her, musing aloud that if it weren't for his stock crash the previous day, he could have handed her an extra 200,000. Upon hearing that the plummeting stocks were from Juhan Bank, Haejun reveals that she had withdrawn all her savings from there, but he responds with a sarcastic remark about her withdrawal not making much difference. He then shares a rumor about the bank's foreign investors pulling out overnight. Despite her outward show of sympathy for Juno, Haejun can't help but feel a smidgen of satisfaction thinking about the bank head's daughter. Spotting some fellow residents, she informs Juno about her need to greet their VIP patient, catching him off guard as he was unaware of her volunteering. As she bids him goodbye, he reminds her about the remaining 7.8 million won from their deal. Haejun shoots him a glare but quickly replaces it with a smile, telling him to say whatever makes him feel better, even as he stammers out an apology. As she leaves to join her colleagues, Juno is left wondering about her well-being. Her fellow residents express their relief at having her in the VIP wing, confessing they were initially nervous. Haejun responds by encouraging them to remember who they are. In unison, they proudly proclaim themselves as the unbeatable CS department, cheering loudly, oblivious to the figure approaching them. Earlier on, Yihan was engrossed in the tranquility of the indoor garden when his assistant informed him about the VIP's arrival. Yihan casually inquired about any news from Juhan Bank, and his assistant shared the latest gossip about the bank's head seemingly wallowing in despair. With a smirk, Yihan remarked on how melodrama seemed to be a family trait, recalling the bank head's daughter's tearful display the other night. The assistant added that the bank head was fervently denying any connections between the incident and the Seomoon group and hinted at a potential hospital visit soon. Yihan, with a playful glint in his eyes, instructed his assistant to pass a message to the bank head: if he dares to cross paths with Yihan, he'll withdraw every single penny from the bank. As they strolled towards the elevator heading for the lobby, the assistant couldn't resist bringing up Dr. Yoon. With a knowing grin, he suggested she'd be pleasantly surprised to learn about Yihan's recent actions on her behalf. Yihan, however, disagreed, indicating he had no intentions of revealing anything, leaving his assistant puzzled. After all, according to the assistant's wisdom derived from dramas, women generally appreciate it when men take their side and look out for them. Yihan merely shrugged off his assistant's advice, choosing to keep his actions under wraps. Yihan's mind then drifted back to a recent encounter at his parents' house. He had bumped into Yuhan, his mother, and Aunt Haejun in the living room. His aunt had tried to persuade him to stay, but Yihan clarified he had only dropped by to seek his father's help, which was already sorted. His mother playfully asked if he needed anything from her, like a sparkly little thing showing off her ring. To their surprise, Yihan agreed, much to his mother's delight and Yuhan's annoyance. Yihan then swiped the toy seal from Yuhan's grasp, expressing his preference for Yuhan not to carry such things around. As he made his exit, Aunt Haejun halted him, offering him a last chance to seek a favor from her before she embarked on her month-long yacht excursion around the Yellow Sea. Yihan, curious, asked if she had purchased a yacht, to which she affirmed. Aunt Haejun, a woman of immense wealth shuttling between New York and Seoul, boasted one of Korea's largest individual cash reserves, remarkably without any business ties. It was then that Yihan queried about her banking choice in Korea. Inside the elevator, Yihan's thoughts were a whirlwind. His father's stern warning about not mixing personal life with business echoed in his mind. He couldn't help but think of Haejun and her blunt confession that she wasn't in love with him. He found himself racking his brain, trying to figure out why she didn't like him and what he could do to change her feelings. As they stepped out of the elevator, Yihan absent-mindedly headed in the wrong direction. His assistant, ever vigilant, gently steered him towards the lobby. But Yihan was having none of it. He waved off the lobby just as he overheard Haejun's voice praising Juno as the best. Peering down, Yihan spotted Haejun and Juno together, a sight that irked him. His assistant suggested that perhaps Haejun and Juno were just friends, though he didn't sound too convinced. They watched as Haejun left Juno's side to engage with her colleagues. Yihan couldn't help but muse to himself, for someone who always claimed to be busy, Haejun sure had time for chit-chat. His assistant defended her, pointing out that surgeons like Haejun always seem busy because they're constantly shadowed by others trying to learn from them. As Yihan observed the scene, he recalled Haejun's warning about not falling for her. With a resolute sigh, he decided to head back to his office. His assistant asked if he planned to greet Dr. Yoon, to which Yihan replied with a definitive no, but just as he started to walk away, a voice calling out for Haejun stopped him in his tracks. Yihan's instincts had always served him well, both personally and professionally. And right now, his gut was telling him that this new guy, Chang-sung, was not going to be satisfied with just being friends with Haejun. Haejun looks on as Chang-sung strides over to her, his entourage of interns trailing behind him. He playfully mentions that she's been spending a lot of time with Juno lately, enough to fuel rumors they might be dating, and cheekily inquires if she's seeing Juno. With a casual air of nonchalance, Haejun deftly deflects his question, citing her busy schedule. She begins to make her exit, her residence in tow, but halts when Chang-sung remarks how she's always been kind to Juno, even back when they were classmates and now colleagues. He then throws out a suggestion, why not send their teams on their way and grab a coffee together? A hint of annoyance flashes across Haejun's face, but she masks it with a polite smile. She tells him she has patients to attend to. Chang-sung brushes off her duties, stating she should delegate and shouldn't be burdened with rounds. He even goes as far as saying she probably can't delegate because she lacks the manpower, and if he could, he would lend her some of his doctors. Haejun assures him she's managing just fine, but Chang-sung continues his relentless chatter. One of Haejun's residents, fed up with Chang-sung's antics, gears up to confront him but is held back by another resident. Meanwhile, Lee-juin's assistant, watching the scene unfold from upstairs, nudges Yihan, suggesting he should step in. Yihan, visibly irritated, grumbles about Chang-sung's typical behavior. Finally, the resident can't take it anymore. He steps up to Chang-sung, telling him Haejun needs to leave. The audacity of a junior doctor interfering in a senior-level conversation irks Chang-sung, while Haejun simply fixes him with a cool glare. Chang-sung accuses Haejun of pretending to be busy before stepping into the elevator with his interns. He insists they should take the elevator first since they're the ones truly busy and bringing in the hospital's revenue, hence deserving the perks. As the elevator doors begin to close, he suggests that Haejun wait for the next one due to space constraints or perhaps take the stairs. But just as the doors are about to shut, Haejun wedges her foot in the gap, forcing them open. She calls out to Chang-sung, asking him where he thinks he's going. Caught off guard, Chang-sung glances at his visibly uncomfortable interns, who are suddenly finding the elevator walls fascinating. He turns back to Haejun, questioning if she was addressing him. With a casual air of authority, she affirms that she is indeed upset but dismisses his suggestion to take their conversation outside. Instead, she orders his interns to vacate the elevator, a move that leaves them visibly startled. Chang-sung questions if her annoyance stems from him snagging the elevator first, to which she responds that she's not just upset, she's livid. She opens up about how he landed his current position because she declined the offer despite having the highest score. She mentions how his department head pleaded with her to join them, adding that even if she had 100 chances to rewrite history, she'd still choose her current path. This revelation stokes the flames of Chang-sung's anger. Addressing her interns next, she points out they're running late and makes a beeline for the elevator. Chang-sung challenges her, asking if her present attitude is a result of his offhand comments. She fires back, saying she wouldn't have minded if he was just bantering with her, but if he dares to mess with her doctors again, she'll make him regret it. She then labels him an a-hole, further incensing him. As the elevator doors close, she throws him a cheeky wink, adding she likes to call all her friends that. Chang-sung kicks the closed elevator door in frustration. Yihan's assistant is left gawking in disbelief, remarking he's never seen Dr. Yoon behave so assertively before. Yihan recalls his assistant once questioning why he wouldn't tell Haejun about his actions on her behalf. He now understands why. As he walks away, he muses that anyone messing with his girlfriend definitely warrants retaliation. Later, Haejun is seen explaining the surgical procedure to her VIP patient, a foreigner who relies on his interpreter to understand the medical jargon. She assures him that the surgery will only take 4 hours. The patient, through his interpreter, inquires if there's an option for a less time-consuming surgery, leading her to explain the health benefits of this specific operation. Following a brief discussion with his interpreter, the patient wants to know if Haejun herself will be conducting his surgery. Haejun, curious, questions if this query stems from concerns about her age or gender. The interpreter, unsure of the patient's reason, prepares to ask him directly, but Haejun stops him. She believes that such a question might cause unnecessary discomfort post-surgery. Then, to everyone's surprise, Haejun switches to fluent German, the patient's native language. She assures him she'll conduct his surgery with the same care as if it were her own heart. This personal touch puts the patient at ease. As they exit the room, her residents express their amazement at her linguistic skills, asking how long she's known German. She casually mentioned she picked up the language when she heard it could earn her a bonus. Given her current workload, she figures it won't be long until she can pay off her debt and everything will be over, but the thought of an end doesn't bring her the relief she anticipated, which puzzles her. One of her residents brings up the prospect of their department gaining favor with the chairman if the VIP wing performs well, pulling her out of her thoughts. The team begins to speculate what might please the chairman. One resident excitedly shares a rumor about the chairman's younger brother visiting the hospital frequently, probing Haejun for details about his checkups and whether he fits the stereotype of a wealthy heir. Haejun thinks back on Yuhan's character when one resident suggests there's a 20-year age gap between the chairman and his brother. Subconsciously, Haejun corrects him, stating it's a 16-year gap, quickly adding that she thinks it's 16 years. The resident dismisses the detail, speculating that the chairman must resent his younger brother for disrupting his sole claim to the family assets. Haejun counters, suggesting that despite their age difference, she doesn't believe there's much sibling rivalry between the two. All the while, she's wondering how she can clear up any misconceptions about her knowledge of the family dynamics. One of the residents, eager to add some spice to the conversation, mentions a friend working at Seomoon Auto. According to this friend, there's a rumor that the chairman once tried to hurl his younger brother out of his office window and even obtained a firearm license due to his siblings' antics. Haejun, having had her fill of gossip, intervenes, advising them to steer clear of such hearsay while navigating the hospital corridors. The residents quickly apologize for their lapse in judgment. One resident, however, can't help but admire how Haejun stands up for the chairman. She swiftly corrects him, stating she's not defending the chairman per se, but merely suggesting they shouldn't buy into narratives steeped in prejudice and bias. Internally though, she finds herself wondering why she's going to such lengths to defend Yihan. Perhaps, she muses, it's because he's just as hardworking as they are, tirelessly striving in the face of adversity, much like their colleague, CS. Her reflections seem to resonate with the residents. They start contemplating whether the chairman might be a man of dedication and vision, someone who's often misunderstood due to his youthful charisma. She adds that he could simply be an average guy, albeit one who ensures people around him are eating well and occasionally flashes a warm smile. She then reprimands herself mentally, wondering what's gotten into her. Shaking off her thoughts, she suggests they all grab some food. As they discuss the cafeteria's uncanny obsession with pork cutlets, they spot Yihan and Yuhan approaching. The residents greet Yihan, who returns the greeting but continues walking past them with Yuhan. Haejun feels a twinge of disappointment, even though she knows it would be odd if he'd stopped to chat. The residents, meanwhile, wonder if Yihan overheard their earlier conversation. As they head for the elevator, Haejun receives a text message. After a quick glance at her phone, she asks her residents to go ahead and eat without her. Yuhan, having overheard the conversation between Haejun and her residents, turns to Yihan with a smirk. He wonders aloud where all those wild rumors about Yihan originated. He then teases Yihan about his silent tolerance of the gossip, questioning whether it didn't irk him at all. Unfazed, Yihan shrugs it off, stating that what truly matters is that there's someone who sees him for who he really is. Settling behind his desk, Yihan chuckles at the idea of a chairman cornering every employee they encounter to grill them about office chatter. Yuhan, never one to let go of an opportunity for banter, asks if Yihan just happened to bump into Haejun and her residents. Despite Yihan's glare, Yuhan continues his playful teasing, even throwing in a wink for good measure. Ignoring his brother's antics, Yihan starts typing on his phone. Yuhan, perched on a nearby chair, probes further, asking if something happened with Haejun. He suggests that Yihan seems as anxious as a teenager about to ask someone out. Yihan, gripping his phone tighter, retorts that he's already dating Haejun. Having just sent a text to Haejun, asking her to keep her evening free after 7 p.m., Yihan finds himself likening a stray leaf fluttering by to Haejun. His mind wanders to the anticipation of asking her out and awaiting her response. To distract himself, he asks Yuhan about his love life. Yuhan, oozing confidence, boasts about dating 14 girls from his class in the past year alone. Suddenly, Yihan's secretary calls to inform him that Haejun has arrived. He instructs her to send Haejun in. As she enters, she greets Yuhan before turning to Yihan, asking him if her surprise visit startled him. Yihan reassures her and offers her a seat, which she declines, stating she has something to discuss, but won't be staying long. Yihan nods, letting her know that he too has something on his mind. He comments on how busy she seemed when he saw her in the VIP wing earlier and that it looked like she was having an engaging chat with her residents. At this, Haejun blushes, causing Yihan to furrow his brows, wondering why the mention of her residence would make her blush. All the while, Yuhan is enjoying the show, grinning from ear to ear. Yihan catches sight of his brother's cheeky grin and playfully orders him out of his office, but Yuhan counters, claiming he wants to spend time with Haejun, the woman who saved his life. Haejun, unaware of the brotherly banter, chastises Yihan for his harsh tone with his only sibling, leaving him with no choice but to grudgingly allow Yuhan to stay. He then addresses Haejun, asking what she wants to discuss. Yuhan, surprised at Yihan's rare display of patience, thinks his brother has truly changed. Haejun, breaking the ice, asks if he holds a firearm license. When he denies it, she triumphantly exclaims she knew it. Yihan, with a knowing smile, insists that that surely wasn't her main reason for visiting. Haejun, suddenly hesitant, confesses she won't be able to make it for dinner due to an urgent matter. Yihan, masking his disappointment with a hint of anger, tells her it's fine and dismisses her, though they both know it's far from fine. Once Haejun leaves, Yuhan teases his brother, suggesting she might be seeing someone else. Yihan shoots him a frosty glare, growling his name and swiftly changing the subject to their mother. Later, we see Haejun meeting Yihan's mother, Mrs. Cha, at a restaurant. As they settle in over tea, Mrs. Cha apologizes for the sudden invitation, which Haejun brushes off politely. They engage in small talk, with Haejun wondering about the real purpose of their meeting. Mrs. Cha mentions having asked Yuhan to distract Yihan for a while, but expresses uncertainty over its effectiveness. Nevertheless, she adds with a sweet smile that she's glad to spend time with Haejun. Haejun admires Mrs. Cha's grace, kindness, and the warm aura that surrounds her. Yet, she can't help but suspect that there must be a specific reason for this clandestine meeting. As their conversation progresses, Haejun addresses Mrs. Cha directly, reminding her of the 5 remaining dates with Yihan. She recalls her initial fear of meeting Yihan's parents, worried they might not approve of their relationship. However, Yihan assured her that she would have to endure it since he was paying her a significant amount. Now, she can't refund the money already paid by Yihan. Mrs. Cha looks puzzled, and Haejun quickly apologizes, stating she was merely thinking about Yihan. Mrs. Cha suggests that Haejun must truly care for Yihan if he pops into her thoughts so easily. Haejun promises to treat Yihan well, silently adding that she'll do so until their contract ends. Then, Mrs. Cha slides an envelope across the table. She says that if Haejun genuinely cares for Yihan, she can't hold back any longer. Haejun, taken aback, wonders if Mrs. Cha is trying to pay her off to end her relationship with Yihan, leaving her pondering her next move. Before she could utter a word, a commanding voice instructs her to rise. She looks up, startled, to find Yihan's stern gaze upon her. He repeats his order and Haejun, confused and slightly panicked, questions his unexpected presence. Unfazed, Yihan warns her that if she doesn't comply, he'll resort to carrying her out of the restaurant. She quickly stands and follows him out, not wanting to cause a scene. Back at the table, Mrs. Cha takes a leisurely sip of her tea, remarking that she expected Haejun to put up more of a fight, even when faced with Yihan's threat. A few tables away, we see Yihan attempting to blend in, hiding under a baseball cap. Setting her cup down, Mrs. Cha gestures for Yihan to join her. She chides him for failing to keep Yihan occupied despite the generous sum she'd given him, but Yihan defends himself, stating that dealing with Yihan is no easy task, all while clutching the envelope that had been intended for Haejun. He then jokingly asks Mrs. Cha if she's emulating dramatic TV shows where mothers bribe potential daughters-in-law to leave their sons. Mrs. Cha dismisses his notion, explaining that the envelope merely contained Yihan's fortune reading. Outside the restaurant, Yihan leads Haejun further away. She pleads with him to slow down, addressing him as Chairman Seo. Yihan reminds her that he prefers to be called by his first name, questioning whether she's still unsure about their relationship status. Haejun blushes, asking him to release her hand. He complies, then inquires if his mother's invitation was the reason for her canceling their date. Haejun admits that she couldn't refuse his mother's request. Yihan then asks if she intended to accept the envelope and sever ties with him. This accusation irks Haejun. She retorts that she neither accepted nor opened the envelope, reminding him that she's capable of making her own decisions without his constant scrutiny. Meanwhile, back in the restaurant, Yihan expresses his surprise to Mrs. Cha about her giving Haejun Yihan's fortune reading despite not knowing her well. Mrs. Cha simply responds that Haejun is the woman Yihan loves. Back outside, Haejun wraps up her passionate monologue and decides it's time to head home. She catches herself wondering why she's feeling so flustered. She could have simply called to cancel their dinner, but instead, she found herself walking all the way to Yihan's office just to see his face. She questions what's so appealing about him when he jumps to conclusions and loses his temper before hearing her out. Back in the cozy warmth of the restaurant, Yihan poses a question to his mother. He wonders if Yihan and Haejun might not be exactly as they appear, echoing Aunt Haejun's earlier suspicions. Outside, Yihan grabs Haejun's shoulders, spinning her around to face him. Inside, Mrs. Cha counters Yihan's doubts, asserting that if there was nothing between Yihan and Haejun, Haejun wouldn't have met her behind Yihan's back. Yihan, locking eyes with Haejun, confesses his own struggles. He tells her she's not the only one having a tough time, asking her to consider how he might be feeling, being in love with a hard-working cardiothoracic surgeon. His words leave Haejun taken aback. He quickly assures her he's not teasing, and there's no need for her to question his sincerity. The next day at work, during a meeting about an upcoming surgery, Haejun finds herself lost in thought. Her reverie is broken when Dr. Choi calls her out, asking her opinion. He notes her unusual silence, wondering if she has issues with him leading the operation. When she denies it, he advises her that, as a doctor, patience is key. After the meeting, a colleague sympathizes with Haejun over Dr. Choi's harshness, but she's too preoccupied to pay attention. She's replaying the previous night's conversation with Yihan in her mind. His confession of love, his expectation of a response from her, and his tender gesture of adjusting her coat against the cold night air, all these moments make her heart race. This sudden surge of emotion nearly makes her dizzy, but a quick-thinking colleague catches her and guides her to a chair, asking if she's okay. He surmises she's overworking herself with back-to-back surgeries throughout the week. Though she insists she's fine, He offers to assist her in her afternoon surgery and advises her to rest until then. Despite his concern, Haejun decides to keep herself busy, believing it's the best remedy for her racing heart. The night before, Yihan had asked Haejun for a clear response. In her confusion, she had requested a day to think it over. Now, she finds herself wondering why on earth she had assumed a day would be sufficient to untangle the web of feelings within her. She instructs the concerned doctor to prepare for surgery, assuring him she's alright. But as he leaves, she admits to herself that she desperately needs a moment to introspect, but time is a luxury she can't afford. She remembers promising Yihan she would have an answer by 7 p.m. the following evening, and he'd agreed to wait. Just then, she sees her resident Kyungmin bounding towards her, hollering her name with urgency. She asks if there's an issue, perhaps something related to the anesthesiologist. Kyungmin, catching his breath, asks if she recalls a foreign patient. After a few moments, she does and inquires if the patient has been located. Kyungmin explains that while they haven't exactly found him, he posits that the patient would have sought help elsewhere. He had posted about it on social media, alerting all members of their medical association. An email from a friend in Incheon suggests they may have admitted the patient. Haejun scans the email, asking where exactly in Incheon this hospital is. Kyungmin admits it's slightly beyond Incheon, but assures her it's not too far. Meanwhile, Yihan's assistant hands him a box containing records of former CEOs. He offers to sift through them for whatever Yihan needs, but Yihan dismisses him, stating it's hard to articulate what he's looking for. The assistant, puzzled, leaves Yihan alone with his thoughts. Yihan stares at the box, reminiscing about Haejun's flustered reaction when he confessed his feelings. He recalls her struggle to breathe, and her shock at seeing the envelope. He reassures himself that he can offer her much more than what's in that envelope, but he's glad he didn't voice this thought to her. He instructs his assistant to leave the box, promising to go through it later. In his solitude, Yihan vows to confess his feelings to Haejun as many times as it takes for her to believe him. His phone vibrates, interrupting his thoughts. He picks it up, smiling as he acknowledges his feelings for Haejun. Yihan picks up a call from Haejun, mentally preparing himself to stay calm and composed. He'd overreacted a bit the previous day, and he's determined not to make the same mistake again. His assistant begins to give him some privacy, but halts in his tracks when he hears Yihan's voice rise in anger. Having worked with the Seomoon group for 4 years, he knows this tone of voice usually signals trouble. Haejun starts off with an apology, stating she won't be able to meet him as planned. Yihan takes a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. He reminds her of her promise to give him an answer. She quickly reassures him that she isn't trying to avoid him and pleads for his understanding. Yihan sinks into a nearby chair, rubbing his temples as she explains she's currently on a search mission that's taking longer than expected. When he asks who she's looking for and she reveals the name, he can't help but feel surprised. Still, he manages to ask through gritted teeth where she is. His assistant observes from a distance, recalling a similar situation where Yihan's anger led to a major reshuffling of the executive board at Seomoon Motors. He worries what this could mean for Haejun. Yihan, meanwhile, tries to gauge how far away she is and learns she's stranded on Bakewal Island after missing the last boat. He asks about her return plan, and she informs him she'll be back once the next boat arrives in the morning. She assures him she'll be back at work and it won't cause any disruptions. His response reveals his worry is more personal than professional. Feeling misunderstood, he tells her to rest and abruptly ends the call. His assistant, sensing the mood, offers him a car to go anywhere he needs. Yihan's response confuses him, leading to a query about his aunt's whereabouts. Back at the hospital, Haejun's resident colleague learns of her impromptu trip and berates Kyungmin for letting her go. Kyungmin retorts, pointing out they were both on duty and couldn't have gone with her. He also reveals Haejun's determination not to lose the patient again. The revelation leaves her colleague surprised and a little flustered. Elsewhere, on a boat in the middle of the ocean, Mrs. Cha and Haejun receive a call from Yihan. Haejun is surprised he's unblocked her and becomes suspicious when he asks her location. She teases him about asking for another favor and reminds him of his promise to be more grateful. His sincere apology takes her aback, and she agrees to turn the boat around upon his request. Early the next morning on Bakewell Island, Haejun finds herself perched outside the home of an elderly woman who kindly offered her a room for the night. She slipped into her shoes and is soaking up the pre-dawn air. The old woman appears, surprised to see Haejun up so early, reminding her that the first boat doesn't leave until sunrise. Haejun flashes a small smile, admitting she just needed some fresh air. Curious, the old woman asks about the individual Haejun is trying to find. The question hangs in the air like a heavy fog, and Haejun's heart sinks. She's not entirely sure who she's searching for anymore. The elderly woman, sharp as a tack, spots Haejun's growing sadness and assumes she must be on the brink of tears. She wonders aloud if someone has wronged Haejun or swiped her money. Haejun forces a smile, prompting the older woman to warn her, a smile like that won't get her far on this island. The woman shares that she's seen all sorts come and go over the years, many searching for someone or something. But she warns Haejun that a half-hearted search will yield no results. Haejun's determination flares at this challenge, and she asks if the woman believes she can find the person she's looking for. The old woman huffs, declaring that it's clear from Haejun's eyes that she traversed the globe to find this individual. She's had plenty of visitors with that same fire in their eyes. Despite the elderly woman's skepticism, Haejun decides to take a brisk walk. The woman calls after her, cautioning her about the chilly winds. As Haejun disappears down the path, the older woman shakes her head, convinced that Haejun won't get far with her current attitude. Moments later, the gate creaks open, and a new visitor arrives, their determined gaze matching the description the old woman had just given. Back in the car, Mrs. Cha is deep in thought while Haejun teases her about her recent encounter with her son. It's not often that Yihan begs for something, and Haejun can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. She reassures Mrs. Cha that her heart is still beating and there's no need to keep paying Yihan to be her hospital guardian anymore. Meanwhile, Haejun is on the beach, lost in thought. She recalls Yihan's last words before he abruptly ended their call. She wishes she could have heard more from him, held on to his voice a little longer. She blushes, grappling with the realization of her feelings for Yihan, tracing back to when he first admitted his love for her. She wonders if his feelings began the moment he brought her food, or perhaps the day he sought her out in the cafeteria, or maybe even the time he couldn't hide his grin while watching her laugh. She shakes her head, flustered. She questions what Yihan's real girlfriend must be like, remembering the day she grabbed his hand to sign a receipt. She can't help but feel a twinge of jealousy at the thought of him with someone else. But she shrugs it off, telling herself it's alright as long as they both feel the same way. Spotting a yacht anchored offshore, she thinks of how Yihan always stood out at the cafeteria, and how he doesn't seem to fit into her world. She resolves to tell him once she's back that their relationship is nothing more than that of a borrower and a lender. Just then, she hears footsteps behind her, and turning around, she finds herself face to face with Yihan. Haejun, taken aback by Yihan's sudden appearance on the island, blurts out her surprise. Yihan flashes her a cheeky grin and admits he couldn't resist coming to see her. He recalls how the elderly woman had asked him to wait for Haejun, but being the stubborn mule he is, he'd set off to find her instead. He chuckles to himself, thinking how he'd always prided himself on his rationality and maturity, yet here he was, gallivanting around Bakewell Island in pursuit of Haejun. As he wandered about, he found himself questioning if she took their promise lightly, or if she genuinely believed she could find someone in such a manner. He spotted her near the lighthouse, and his heart leaped. He'd wanted to find her so he could bombard her with questions, but seeing her there, those questions seemed to dissolve into the sea breeze. The truth hit him then, he'd raced over to the island like a lovesick teenager, because he couldn't get her out of his mind. A sheepish Haejun reminds Yihan that she'd promised to return the next day, to which he replies that patience isn't exactly his strong suit, hence his impromptu visit. She points to the gleaming yacht offshore, asking if it belongs to him. Yihan dismisses the question, focusing instead on shielding her from the chilly wind with his scarf. Haejun tries to steer the conversation back to the yacht, but Yihan playfully tugs at the scarf, pulling her closer. He leans in, whispering that the color of the boat is the least of his concerns. He'll figure it out once he regains his senses. She starts to speak again, but he silences her with a soft whisper, asking her to close her eyes. When she complies, he seizes the moment, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. As she wraps her arms around him, reciprocating the kiss, Yihan pulls away slightly, his eyes twinkling with mischief. He asks if she wants him to stop, to which a blushing Haejun shyly shakes her head. With a triumphant grin, he pulls her closer and kisses her once more. Back in Seoul, Haejun is lost in thought, remembering Yihan's surprise visit to the dock earlier. She had only agreed to turn the boat around because he'd promised to apologize, which he did, much to her and Mrs. Cha's astonishment. Mrs. Cha joins Haejun, confessing she'd had trouble sleeping the previous night. Haejun teases her about her late-night catalog browsing habits, and Mrs. Cha insists she just likes to stay on top of trends. Haejun doesn't buy it, reminding her how she'd selected wedding presents while shopping for Yihan's first birthday ring. Mrs. Cha blushes at the memory. Suddenly, Haejun remembers something she'd forgotten to tell Yihan and decides to text him, relieved that he'd finally unblocked her. On board the opulent yacht, Yihan and Haejun find themselves in a cozy corner, snuggled up on a plush couch. As Yihan showers her with affectionate kisses, Haejun playfully nudges him away, calling out his name in mild protest. Yihan, lost in the moment, continues to shower her with kisses along her neck. When she calls his name again, he finally pulls away, asking what's up. But before she can even utter a word, he pulls her back into a passionate kiss. She gently pushes him away and sits upright. Bemused, he asks her what's wrong, and she insists they need to talk. But Yihan pulls her closer, promising they'll talk, but right now, he wants to continue their moment. He leans in, but she stops him, insisting she needs to express something. This leaves Yihan slightly frustrated, but he quickly apologizes for rushing her, admitting that he is finding it hard to contain his feelings for her. Curious, Yihan asks her what she wants to share, fixing her with an intense gaze. This causes her to blush, and she momentarily forgets what she wants to say. Flustered, she stammers that they can carry on since they've already crossed a boundary, but this isn't what she initially wanted to convey. Seizing the opportunity, Yihan resumes their makeout session. But their moment is once again interrupted by the buzz of a phone. Yihan wishes to ignore it, but Haejun insists it could be important. Grumbling about interruptions, he checks his phone, only to learn from his aunt's text that there are cameras installed on the yacht. This revelation angers him so much that he ends up crushing his phone. After getting dressed, the duo heads to the yacht's deck. Haejun is visibly excited, taking in the breathtaking scenery. Yihan reminds her about their unfinished conversation, and she assures him that she hasn't forgotten her promise and isn't trying to evade him. As she continues to chatter, he cuts her off by tenderly calling her name. He takes her hand into his, gently intertwining their fingers, and pulls her close. He then asks her if she could turn back time before she saved the patient's life and if she would do anything differently. She tells him he doesn't need to hold her hands, and he retorts that her hands are too cold and surgeons need to protect their hands. He encourages her to answer his question, and she firmly states she wouldn't change a thing because she's a doctor. Yihan pulls her into a warm embrace, confessing that her conviction is why he trusts her and believes in her truthfulness. This heartfelt confession brings tears to her eyes, and she returns his hug, their hearts beating in sync.
At the hospital, Dr. Choi is talking to a man and tells him there is no need to worry. The man is still concerned and asks if Dr. Yoon Haejun will be the one doing his surgery. Dr. Choi reassures him by saying that Dr. Yoon will be in the operating room, but she will be assisting him, not leading the surgery. Dr. Yoon smiles at the man and agrees with Dr. Choi, adding that she will do her very best to help Dr. Choi during the surgery. This makes the man feel more at ease knowing both doctors will be there for his operation. As they take the man to the operating room, Dr. Choi starts talking to Haejun. He tells her she is quite the opportunist and even jokes that she was trying to impress him. As he walks away, Dr. Choi warns her not to get in the way of his surgery. Haejun watches him leave and thinks to herself that she will just think of him as a sunflower. She decides there is no use getting angry at a plant, so she won't let his words bother her. Kyungmin and his friend are talking about Dr. Choi. They mention how Dr. Choi is the one pushing himself into this surgery. There's a lot of gossip about him lately. Kyungmin thinks Dr. Choi is probably acting out because of all the talk. He tells his friend about a patient who came to the ER after a car accident. Dr. Choi had to work with the orthopedic surgeons because they needed to amputate the patient's leg. They were already short on time, but Dr. Choi caused a delay because he couldn't find a blood vessel. This made things even more stressful for everyone involved. Kyungmin and his friend keep talking about Dr. Choi. They mention how Dr. Choi and Dr. Oh from the orthopedic surgery team argued during the car accident case. Luckily, the surgery went well, but it started a lot of rumors. People are saying Dr. Choi is too stuck in his ways. Dr. Choi and Dr. Oh didn't tell anyone about their argument, but others saw them fighting. There's no way Dr. Choi hasn't heard the rumors by now, so it must be on his mind. Kyungmin thinks Dr. Choi is probably trying to use this surgery as a way to prove himself and fix his reputation. Haejun thinks to herself that there's nothing she can do about the situation with Dr. Choi. She decides it's enough talk about him and tells Kyungmin to stay focused. She reminds him that he said he was observing today's surgery. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi is talking with Yihan. Yihan notices Haejun and looks at her, wondering what she is thinking. Haejun, trying to stay calm, focuses on the task at hand and prepares for the surgery. Memories from a few days ago come back to Haejun. She remembers Yihan asking her what she's going to do about the missing patient. She told him she'll just have to keep paying off her debt, and she will pay it off. She explained that she can separate her work and personal life. Yihan held her from behind and said he knows she can do it. He then mentioned that their next date is in 3 days. His aunt is hosting a charity auction, and Haejun said she'll make sure to write up their receipt in advance. Yihan smiled and said he hopes she knows he's here to see Yoon Haejun today, not Dr. Yoon. Then he kissed her on the cheek. Right now, Dr. Choi mentions they weren't expecting to see Yihan up here. Yihan responds that the VIP patient is indeed here. Dr. Choi says today's surgery won't be too hard, but with Yihan's support, they'll do great. Yihan assures Dr. Choi that he'll be thorough and give it his all. They exchange confident nods, ready to tackle the surgery together. Yihan walks past Haejun and meets Kyungmin. He extends his hand for a handshake, saying it's nice to meet him. Kyungmin, a bit stunned, acknowledges that it's a pleasure to meet Yihan. Yihan also talks to Dr. On Mingguk. He mentions that he heard Mingguk works really hard day and night. Yihan expresses his trust that Mingguk will do well in today's surgery. Mingguk thanks him warmly for the encouragement. As they exchange greetings, the atmosphere feels supportive and friendly, getting everyone ready for the surgery ahead. Yihan turns towards Haejun and extends his hand, recalling they've met before. Haejun nods, inwardly surprised that someone like him is interested in her. She shakes his hand and mentions she didn't expect to see him here. Yihan smiles warmly and comments that he's heard a lot about her skills. He adds that he hopes to witness them firsthand someday. Haejun appreciates the compliment, feeling encouraged by Yihan's confidence in her abilities. Haejun wonders to herself why Yihan came here. They had agreed to meet at the auction, so she worries about getting caught. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi looks angrily at them with spite. Yihan comments that he's excited to see something so bold today that he can't look away. Haejun feels a bit nervous about Yihan's unexpected presence and hopes they don't get into trouble. Despite Dr. Choi's disapproving glare, Yihan seems intrigued by what's to come during the surgery. In the operating room, Dr. Choi explains that today's surgery will be replacing an artificial aorta because of stenosis. He'll be leading the surgery himself. Haejun will assist him as the first assistant, and Minguk will be the second assistant. As they get ready for the operation, Dr. Choi briefs the team on what to expect and assigns everyone their roles. Haejun and Minguk nod, ready to support Dr. Choi throughout the procedure. At the charity event, Yuhan walks in and asks Yihan why he's always up the stairs. He wonders how Yihan can stand wearing a suit and tie every day. Yihan tells him to quit complaining. Inside, Yihan silently reflects on his life. Even though he was born as the heir to the Seomoon group, he's never felt truly comfortable. He knows that everything comes with a price, and sometimes, that price is feeling out of place despite being surrounded by luxury. Yuhan asks Yihan about Haejun. He mentions that Mr. Kong said she has an important surgery today, possibly for the famous person their dad called up. Yuhan wonders if Yihan is worried that Haejun might make a mistake and not be able to show up tonight. Yihan dismisses the idea, calling it nonsense. But Yuhan insists that Yihan can be honest if he's worried. Yihan smiles and confidently states that Haejun doesn't make mistakes. He trusts her abilities and believes she'll do great in the surgery, reassuring his brother that everything will be fine, wonders why he likes her so much. Yihan realizes he's never put this much effort into anything like he has into being with her. Every smile she gives and every word she says hasn't been easy to get from her, but he's determined to see them. He's willing to hold back 100 frowns just to see her smile once. And he's ready to arrange 1,000 coincidental run-ins if it means he gets to see her. The fact that he can't help but give his all to this adventure means that she is absolutely perfect to him. Just as Haejun walks in, Yihan can't help but notice how beautiful she looks. He thinks to himself that he thought he could handle anything Haejun would wear, but she still manages to surprise him. Meanwhile, Yuhan tries to talk to Yihan, but Yihan quickly interrupts him by handing him his credit card and telling him to go and spend until it's maxed out. Yuhan looks confused, but Yihan just wants to focus on Haejun and doesn't want any distractions. He's willing to let his brother shop to his heart's content just to have some uninterrupted time with Haejun. Haejun waves to Yihan, and he walks over to her. She asks if he's been waiting long, and he quickly replies, not at all. Yihan stretches out his hand, and she takes it as they walk together. As they stroll, Haejun mentions that she's been to many events, but never an auction before. She wonders if it looks pretty because it's Christmas. It dawns on her that it's her first time going out on Christmas Eve. She usually spends Christmas at the hospital, where they have a party with the kids and give out gifts. Yihan listens, intrigued by Haejun's reflections on her past Christmas celebrations. He's glad to be spending this special evening with her, creating new memories outside of the hospital walls. Haejun asks Yihan if there's something he doesn't like about her dress. She's spent a lot of time picking out her outfit for today's event. Yihan quickly reassures her, saying he never said he doesn't like it, casually asks if the dress is from her wardrobe, and she confirms it is. Yihan can't help but think to himself that he should clear out her wardrobe because just the idea of her wearing this dress somewhere else makes him feel jealous. Despite his inner jealousy, Yihan maintains a calm exterior, not wanting to make Haejun feel insecure about her choice of clothing. Haejun reveals that it's actually her first time wearing the dress. She explains that she got drunk last night with the youngest resident doctor and bought it on a whim. Yihan admires her and tells her she looks incredible in it, then asks about the surgery, and Haejun happily reports that everything went smoothly from start to finish. The patient's vitals were stable throughout, and she expects them to wake up tomorrow. As they walk, holding each other, they attract attention from passers-by who stare at them. Despite the stares, they focus on each other, enjoying the moment together. Yihan offers Haejun a glass of wine, and she happily accepts, mentioning that she hasn't eaten much today. Yihan assures her that if she starts feeling uncomfortable, they can leave any time. Haejun appreciates his concern but insists she'll be fine. She notices Yihan's mother nearby and suggests she should go say hi. She assures Yihan that she'll be okay on her own as well. Haejun dashes over excitedly to say hello to Yihan's mom. Meanwhile, Yuhan walks up from behind and points out to Yihan how polite Dr. Yoon is for going over to greet his mother. Just then, a woman pops up behind Yihan, waving and calling out his name happily. Mrs. Cha's friends are gathered around Haejun, chattering about how she might be the one dating Chairman Seo. They spotted her from a distance at the gallery opening, and now they're thrilled to have the chance to greet her properly. Mrs. Cha nods, mentioning how Chairman Seo is quite particular in his choices. She adds that it's tough to catch up due to her busy schedule but appreciates Haejun making it to the event despite that. Haejun beams with happiness, expressing how delighted she is to see Mrs. Cha today. As the ladies continue chatting, Haejun quietly wonders to herself about Yihan's mom. She seems so elegant, but Haejun can't help but worry if she's too fragile for all this excitement. However, Mrs. Cha seems to handle everything gracefully. Meanwhile, Yihan is in conversation with the lady, who wants him to apologize and say thank you. He shrugs and says he can't do that for her right now. She brings up how he used to say he'd never ask her for anything, but now he's doing exactly that. He replies, acknowledging that things have changed. Then, she teasingly asks if he's curious about the gift she's prepared for him. He jokingly says he isn't, but he'll entertain her. With a mischievous smile, she reveals a hotel key, mentioning the amazing views from the suites, especially since it's Christmas Day, mentions he could easily get it himself. She counters, saying the hotel is completely booked already. She admits she wasn't naive to think otherwise, especially on Christmas. He doesn't have to accept her gift, she adds, just curious about how it would feel to receive a thank you from him. With a thoughtful expression, she muses about the key feeling nice in her hand, even wondering if she should have brought another one. Mrs. Cha asks Haejun if everything was okay, feeling like it might have been a bit intense. Haejun assures her it wasn't at all, thanking Mrs. Cha for being so welcoming today. She feels relieved to finally get the chance to explain what happened last time, but Mrs. Cha interrupts, telling her it's unnecessary to explain herself. Mrs. Cha suggests Haejun should go back to Yihan since he's probably waiting for her. Haejun heads back to Yihan, and Mrs. Cha thinks to herself that this is exactly what she wanted to see. Those who are destined to shine will do so on their own. Yihan notices his mom having a good time over there and asks Haejun what they were talking about. She replies, saying they were just chatting about regular mom stuff. They start talking, and Haejun bursts into laughter. Yihan wonders what's so funny, and she tells him she was just reminded of the day he confessed his love to her. Surprised, he asks why she thought about it all of a sudden. She reflects on how surprised she was when he confessed his love. It caught her completely off guard, to the point where she couldn't believe it at first. She even questioned if he was just joking around. Before that moment, their talks were mainly about her debt repayment. She confesses that she had a fleeting thought that maybe he said it to divert her attention from the debt issue, despite his wealth. After all, 7 to 8 million won is quite a hefty sum of money, and she couldn't help but wonder if he was trying to avoid deducting it from her debt, even if just for a moment. As the auction begins, they introduce a cozy 2017 yacht from an Italian company that fits 4 people. Haejun is surprised they're auctioning off something like that. She shoots a glance at Yihan, feeling like things might be getting a bit too extravagant. She knows she wouldn't ask someone out just to avoid paying off a debt, and Yihan seems to understand that too as he smiles back at her. Then, he raises his hand and asks if there are any cameras on the yacht. When they say no, he confidently starts the bidding at 50 million won. With determination, he raises the bid to 780 million won, casually asking where he needs to sign afterward. Haejun questions Yihan about why he bought the yacht, reminding him that he bid 780 million won. He casually responds, saying it's just a coincidence. She urges him to be honest, noting that he did it right after she mentioned her doubts. Yihan admits it's something he genuinely wanted, and if it shows her how serious he is about their relationship, then that's even better. He adds that it's something she's always wanted to. While he acknowledges it's a lot of money, he wonders why she would think he wouldn't worry about spending that much. She expresses doubt, noting he can pretty much get anything he desires. Yihan counters, saying he's actually pondered this for quite a while, perhaps longer than she thinks. He emphasizes that she doesn't know how long he's yearned for it, how much he's envisioned having it with him, and the emotions he'd feel once it's in his possession. It's been a burning desire within him for so long that he's practically obsessed with it. Haejun questions Yihan about what he meant, asking if he was referring to the yacht. Yihan seems surprised by her assumption and challenges her, asking if that's genuinely what she believes. Meanwhile, from a distance, Chansung and his girlfriend catch sight of Yihan and Haejun. The girlfriend recognizes Yihan, mentioning she heard he's now the chairman of his hospital. She admires Haejun, noting that she looks like a celebrity, but she can't quite recall her name. Despite her uncertainty, she's convinced they're a couple. Chansung remains silent, his expression tense as he observes them. Eventually, he breaks the silence, expressing doubt about Haejun's dedication to the hospital. He remarks that her actions seem to contradict her earlier claim that the hospital was her life. On the yacht, Yihan is lying on top of Haejun on the bed. He checks in, asking if she's alright, and she nods, admitting she's not sure how to put into words what she's feeling. Yihan teases her, suggesting that what she's feeling is probably her starting to like him. He tells her not to deny it, causing her to blush. She responds, saying even if it's true, he doesn't have to say it like that. Yihan insists she looks at him, confessing that he likes her too, and they lean in to kiss each other. The next day, Haejun stands outside, taking in the view. Yihan joins her, wrapping his arms around her in a hug. They enjoy the moment together, soaking in the scenery and each other's company. In a flashback, it's the day before Haejun's CSAT exam, and her family is all stressed out, covered in red stickers for seizure. The pressure's on her not to make a single mistake anymore. There's a real chance she might have to give up on her dreams if things don't go well. But despite the tense atmosphere, she manages to crack a smile and reassure everyone that she's okay. She knows it's a tough situation, but she tries to focus on the positives. One good thing is that no one in her family has to live separately just to make ends meet. Plus, she's grateful she doesn't have to rush into finding a job right away to make money. Maybe it would have been easier if she hadn't been accepted in the first place. She spent hours filling out all those scholarship applications her teacher sent her way. She kept her pen moving because she felt like if she stopped, she'd sink into despair. Just when it all started to blur together from filling out so many, she finally got the scholarship she'd been hoping for. It's amazing how everything fell into place thanks to an anonymous member of their financial aid association. This dream coming true is like the first and last wish she ever had for herself. It feels surreal, like she's living in a dream. Overflowing with gratitude, she sits down to write a heartfelt letter to express her thanks. In the letter, she makes a promise to work hard and become someone important one day. She hopes they take the time to read it, and she's pretty confident they will. She's worked hard to become someone anyone would be proud of. Along the way, she's learned that the world isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but there's still genuine warmth out there, even in unlikely places. Right now, she's making a wish for herself for the second time in her life, rather than just for her patients. It's a new chapter for her, one filled with hope and personal growth. She tells Yihan how beautiful the ocean looks at sunrise. If she had as much money as him, she admits she'd probably buy the boat just to enjoy this view every day. Yihan hugs her tightly, suggesting they just stay like this for a while. He expresses his wish that they'll stay in each other's memories for a long time to come. It's a sweet moment between them, filled with warmth and affection. Wonders what she could possibly be thinking about when he's right beside her. She admits she was pondering how to become the greatest doctor in Korea. Haejun reassures him that if he ever feels unwell, he should tell her because she can help him feel better. Yihan stays silent for a moment, leaving her wondering what's on his mind. But it turns out, he's just teasing her, and then he playfully lifts her up. It's a light-hearted moment between them, full of laughter and affection. To the hospital, Haejun updates the patient's parents, letting them know that the surgery went smoothly, and their child is doing fine. She assures them that because he's still young, he regained consciousness last night. With a smile, she adds that he'll be ready to go home in no time. The parents express their gratitude and offer to repay her in any way they can. Haejun humbly responds, saying they were just doing their job, and Dr. Choi deserves credit as the operating surgeon. Dr. Choi steps in, mentioning that everything has been going smoothly, but they'll continue to monitor the patient closely for now, just to be safe. It's a moment of relief and gratitude for everyone involved. Haejun looks worn out, and Dr. Choi approaches her, saying they need to have a chat. He mentions that she probably assisted him in the VIP operation, but she shouldn't let it go to her head. He emphasizes that nothing has changed between them. Haejun nods, acknowledging that he's hoping nothing will change, but she reassures him that she was just doing her best for the patient. It's a brief but important conversation, reminding them both to stay grounded and focused on their work. Questions if she believes graduating from Hankook University and being Dr. Park's favorite is all that matters. He also asks if she expected him to thank her for what she said to the VIP patient's parents earlier. He makes it clear he doesn't need her charity. Haejun becomes really angry, her emotions flaring up in response to his accusations. She questions if he even understands what real charity is. Does he think it's as simple as it seems? She tells him he doesn't even realize what his real problem is. He probably believes she swooped in and stole his place. She notices how he's so concerned about rumors that he snaps at people who haven't done anything wrong. Choi shouts back, defending himself, saying there's nothing wrong with him. Haejun can't believe he still can't see that about himself. It's a tense exchange, with emotions running high. She points out that he's too caught up worrying about what others think that he can't see there's nothing wrong with his skills. She mentions how she's reviewed every surgery he's been part of, and if he'd made a mistake, she'd have been the first to call him out. After all, they're not exactly on friendly terms. His biggest issue is his lack of faith in his own abilities. But she reassures him he shouldn't fret because she wouldn't waste her time helping someone like him if she didn't believe in him. It's a straightforward but firm reminder that he's capable. Despite his doubts at Taehan's office, he checks his phone, expecting a call from her, but she hasn't reached out yet. He sighs to himself, feeling a bit disappointed. He shifts his focus back to the meeting, discussing plans for the transplant center. He's adamant about not tearing it down to make way for shopping malls. After the meeting, Mr. Kong begins calling him, probably about something urgent. Kong calls to ask if Yihan will be attending a wedding this weekend. It's for the grandson of the head of Chungwon Hospital, Kong Joo-hyun. Joo-hyun is currently a doctor at Hankook University Hospital, but he's expected to return to Chungwon and become the chairman someday. Kong suggests it might be a good idea to get to know him now, but Yihan declines, saying he'll get to know him after he becomes the chairman. After the call, Haejun enters his office, holding a heart-shaped wooden piece in her hand. She tells him she knocked since his secretary wasn't there, but he probably didn't hear it. He notices the object in her hand and asks about it. She explains that she brought it along in case people thought she was visiting him without a reason. Holding something like this, she thought, would make her look more serious. He smiles and says, "Good thinking." Yihan walks up to her, and she tells him she ran into Director Han on her way here. She says Director Han kept glaring at her, making her start to wonder if she did something wrong. Yihan reassures her, saying it's impossible she did anything wrong. She then holds up the small wooden heart and asks if he has any questions about it. Yihan nods and says, "Sure." He explains that he was actually on his way to ask her something else, and her visit saved him a trip. He recalls that she mentioned he could come to her whenever he had questions, so he decided to take her up on that offer. Haejun smiles, feeling a bit more relaxed. She says she's glad he remembered and that she's always happy to help. She then explains a little more about the wooden heart, saying it's something she made for a patient to cheer them up. Yihan listens with interest, appreciating her thoughtfulness and dedication to her patients. This leads them into a comfortable conversation, making the atmosphere in the office warm and friendly. As their hands touch, she pulls away slightly and reminds him they're in a hospital. She looks around nervously and says it's not appropriate to do this here because she's a doctor and they have to be professional. He nods and tells her he knows they're in a hospital, and even adds that it's his hospital, so he understands the rules. But then he points to the heart monitor, puzzled, and asks why the heart is beating so strangely. He reminds her that she's the one who brought the heart here and asks her to explain what's happening. She looks at the monitor, then at him, and says that from what she can tell, the heart is beating this way because it likes her. Just then, she accidentally drops the heart, and they start kissing. He pulls back for a moment and asks if she's done with work for the day. She smiles and says he must really like her. He then asks if she's free this weekend. She looks a bit sorry and says she already has plans for the weekend. He asks her what plans she has, and she tells him she's going to a wedding. On the day of the wedding, Haejun sees Oreo. They chat for a while about the heart transplant center. Then, Haejun spots her friend who's getting married. Haejun asks her friend if she's happy, and her friend says yes, adding that Haejun looks happy too. This is the wedding Yihan had turned down earlier. Haejun thinks to herself that Yihan said it was fine, but she can't understand why she feels so empty inside right now. This isn't the first time she's been to a wedding, so she shouldn't be feeling silly. Haejun turns to Snow and asks where the groom is. Snow points towards the door and says he's over there. Just as Haejun is about to walk over to greet him, she catches sight of Yihan and wonders why he's here. She can't help but feel a bit surprised and curious about his unexpected presence. She strides over to him, concern etched on her face, and asks what's on his mind. Inside, he's convinced they were destined to cross paths. Yihan can't help but notice how Haejun is everywhere at the wedding. He quietly ponders why they didn't let her catch the bouquet if they're going to keep her so occupied. He wonders how she manages to keep smiling despite everything. Does it mean they've been struggling without her? He's made the journey all the way here, but it seems like he can't catch a break to spend time with her. Dr. Kong walks over to Yihan and casually asks if he's grabbed a bite to eat yet. Yihan nods, saying the ceremony was lovely. Dr. Kong then praises Haejun, and Yihan chimes in, mentioning how Kang's grandpa used to fret that he'd be too wrapped up in work to find a partner, but now he sees it was all for nothing. Yihan admits he's surprised he managed to squeeze in the time, especially since he hasn't been back from the States for that long. Kong reveals that it's actually what inspired him to settle down. He confesses he didn't get why he was living such a busy life all by himself. After putting in so much effort at work, he craved something steady in his life. That's why he decided to take the plunge. Yihan congratulates him again on his wedding, smiling warmly. Haejun catches up with Dr. Kim, teasing her about not catching the bouquet. She laughs it off, saying she's not bothered at all. Dr. Kim jokes back, saying she's already married to CS, so she doesn't need to worry about it. Then, he brings up the rumor about the chairman of jail being at the wedding and possibly having some good news to share soon. He speculates that the chairman might be announcing his own upcoming wedding. Dr. Kim nods, recalling how Chairman Kong had a tough time finding nice jewelry for Dr. Kang's wedding gifts. It turns out Chairman Seo's mom had already raided all the jewelry stores in Seoul, preparing for her eldest son's wedding. Haejun wonders if he knows anything about who he's planning to marry. He shakes his head, saying he hasn't heard much, but his mom thinks the mystery girl is the perfect fit for their family. Then, he asks how long she plans to stay in jail. He mentions they're setting up a transplant center in Ilsan and suggests she consider joining. He'd be happy to recommend her for the job. Haejun thanks him for the heads up. She tells herself quietly that she shouldn't jump to conclusions, it's just a rumor. Yihan would never do that. Just then, Yihan approaches her, holding flowers. He hands them to her, saying he suddenly felt like buying them. He just had a feeling he should. Yihan pops into his parents' house out of the blue. His mom comments that it's not like him to drop by without warning and asks if he'll stick around for dinner. Yihan brushes it off, saying he's just there to pick something up. While he's walking around, he suddenly stops and glances at his brother, Yuhan. Yuhan squeaks in surprise, catching Yihan's attention. Yihan playfully teases him, pointing out that he hasn't even said anything yet. Mrs. Cha calls out to Yihan to come see something interesting. She excitedly points out some of the toys Yuhan used to play with when he was a little kid, commenting on how adorable he was back then. Among the toys, Yihan spots a letter he received from Haejun when she was younger and had just gotten accepted somewhere. In the letter, she addresses him as Dear Anonymous Benefactor, mentioning that she was told he preferred to stay anonymous, so she won't reveal her name either. But she promises that when they finally meet in person, he'll learn her name. She reassures him that as long as he believes in her, their meeting will be special. The letter was short, but it made him want to respond for the first and last time. Despite receiving tons of documents and messages in the business world, he's never felt any real sincerity. But whenever he sees people trying hard to get even the tiniest reaction from him, he wishes he had kept the letter safe somewhere. He had held onto it, he would have flaunted it regularly. It would have been his go-to example of genuine sincerity that he could have proudly displayed to anyone trying to connect with him. Since then, he's only experienced that same kind of sincerity when her sincere, albeit unpolished contract crossed his desk. He understands the desperation she must have felt at the time, but things have shifted since then, when he had to endure listening to others speak to her like he was just an outsider that day. He could have easily called someone to arrange an even bigger and fancier bouquet. But instead, he dashes off to a nearby flower shop because he wants to hand it to her right away. All he wants is to see her smile. However, when she forces herself to smile, he notices a slight tremble at the corner of her lips. Does he have any words to share? She's sharp enough to understand the message behind his gestures. At first, he furrows his brow, feeling frustrated by the situation. But then, he's left utterly speechless, his mind swirling with confusion. He never considered the idea of proposing at someone else's wedding. Just as he's about to open his mouth to speak, she flashes him a broad smile, adding to the mix of emotions flooding his mind. She tells him she likes the flowers, but he notices slight tremors on the right side of her lips. Is it because she got recruited? Did something else happen while he was away? Just then, Yihan rushes off to check another letter. It's the Seoul at the hospital. Kyungmin informs Haejun that the interpreter is running late. He suggests they may need to ask the patient to wait a little longer. Kyungmin noticed that Haejun seemed to have a good grasp of German. She confidently introduced herself and greeted the patient. They might have to manage without the interpreter for now. Haejun meets with the patient and starts off by saying she was told that the interpreter will be coming soon, so they just need to hang tight for a bit. She then expresses her sincere hope that he remains in good health and feels better soon. The patient responds with gratitude, thanking her for her care and mentioning that he's already feeling much better because of her help. Haejun admits to the patient that she struggles a bit when he starts speaking in longer sentences, apologizing for any inconvenience it may cause. Kyungmin, overhearing their conversation, steps in and suggests that Haejun stay with the patient for a moment while he calls the interpreter. He'll see if they can offer assistance over the phone to help bridge any communication gaps until the interpreter arrives. After a while, Haejun starts to wonder if she should give a translator app a shot. The patient then suggests that if it's okay with her, he'd like to invite her to visit his home country. However, Haejun remains silent, not understanding what he's saying. Just as they hear a knock on the door, she assumes it's the interpreter. But to her surprise, it turns out to be Yihan. Earlier that day, Yihan heads to the office and inquires about the VIP patient. The employee gives a report, mentioning that they've been working on what he discussed yesterday. However, they were told it would take some time to get everything ready. Yihan comments that there are plenty of jewelry stores in Seoul, so it shouldn't be difficult unless someone is buying up all the stock. Suddenly, he recalls his mother being the one doing just that. A little while later, his mom strolls in with Yuhan. She explains that Yuhan wasn't feeling well this morning, and since today is the founding day of his school, she thought they should swing by the hospital. Yihan jumps in right away, asking her if she's the one behind it. He mentions that all the jewelry shops have run out of jewels, so he suspects her involvement. Mrs. Cha admits she might be jumping the gun, but she believes that when an opportunity arises, it's best to seize it. Yihan agrees, understanding her perspective, and assures her she hasn't done anything wrong. She then asks if things are finally falling into place. They both agree that it's important to act when the timing is right. However, Yihan decides he's going to take his time and wait for the perfect moment. They agree that there's a right time and place for everything. Yihan starts chatting about what if the VIP patient falls for her and turns out to be a prince. Right then, Yihan suddenly dashes off, leaving them behind. His mom thanks Yihan for being so thoughtful with his words. At this moment, Yihan mentions to Haejun that he heard the patient is scheduled to leave the hospital today, so he came to say goodbye. Haejun welcomes him inside and explains that the patient speaks only German, and since the interpreter is running late, she asks if Yihan could help with translation. Without hesitation, Yihan agrees to assist. Yihan introduces himself to the patient, extending a friendly handshake. The patient then takes a moment to commend Haejun for her excellent care, expressing gratitude for her dedication as a doctor. Meanwhile, Yihan nods appreciatively, glad to be of help in bridging the language barrier. Haejun picks up on the tension brewing between the guys in the room. She provides Yihan with instructions on what to convey to the patient. However, Yihan misinterprets her words and ends up saying something completely different, inadvertently telling the patient to leave. With confusion and disappointment, the patient gets up and exits the room. Observing the sudden change in the patient's demeanor, Haejun expresses concern, noting that he looks sad all of a sudden. Yihan tries to inject a bit of humor into the situation, commenting that at least they can rest assured it's not due to any heart problems. Despite his attempt to lighten the mood, there's a palpable sense of regret lingering in the air. The translator finally arrives and spots the patient in the hallway. Kyungmin rushes over to Haejun to inform her, but she tells him that the chairman has already translated for her. She continues chatting with Kyungmin, and Yihan starts to feel a bit excluded from the conversation. He decides to excuse himself, saying he'll be heading out. They thank him for his help, and he walks away. Haejun reflects inwardly, thinking that maybe she should have directly asked Yihan about it that day. She realizes she didn't necessarily need to hear his response. She doubts she could have kept a smile on her face while he told her whatever he had to say with that cold expression of his. It's not that she doesn't trust him, though. But being described as the perfect daughter-in-law for his family just doesn't seem like her. The interpreter catches up with Haejun and tells her that the patient wanted him to pass along a message to her. He admits it came as quite a shock, but he wanted to extend his congratulations to her. In Yihan's home, Mr. Kong arrives with a box of jewelry sent by his mother. He explains that she believes Yihan will need it for an upcoming conversation with Dr. Yoon. Yihan nods, acknowledging that they've already talked about it. As Mr. Kong sets down the box, Yihan's gaze falls on a ring. In his thoughts, he reflects that he did mention something related to this, albeit indirectly. Earlier, during a conversation with a VIP patient, he casually brought up their plans to get married, planting the seed of their relationship in someone else's mind. First, there were old classmates, students, and fellow alumni popping up. Now, even random foreigners are appearing out of nowhere. Yihan feels like he can't give Haejun a moment's peace. He asks Mr. Kong if he's seen as untrustworthy, curious if he tends to inspire a lot of trust in others. Mr. Kong replies that he's not sure where Yihan heard that, but it's not true. At the hospital, Kyungmin and Haejun talk about the transplant center plans. Haejun wonders to herself if she was too tough on someone. She suggests they take a break while they can. Back at her house, she thinks to herself that the news might be good for him, but it's not for her. She ponders whether rich people date one person but marry someone else. It's becoming difficult for her to even glance at him now. She makes an effort not to appear uncomfortable when he walks into the VIP wing, but she suspects he might have noticed anyway. As the eldest son of the Seomoon Group and the chairman of Jaeil Hospital, his influential family likely puts a great deal of thought into arranging his marriage. Considering she hasn't been dating him for all that long, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to push her aside if they wanted to. Yet, she wonders if he would comply with their wishes. Does he prioritize his family's expectations over his own desires? Perhaps when it comes to matters like this, he does. It's a thought that weighs on her mind. She knows she needs some time to process everything, but lately, it's becoming increasingly challenging to face him. Each encounter seems to add more questions than answers, leaving her feeling unsettled and uncertain about their future. She heads up to the rooftop and overhears Yihan saying, "Perfect timing." Wondering why he's there, she approaches him. Yihan moves closer and asks why she's also on the rooftop. She explains she's been busy and had a lot to do, so she didn't plan on seeing him. He questions why she's there then, and she responds that she was planning to sleep but wanted to clear her head first by looking at the trees and flowers. Then, unexpectedly, he takes her hand and pulls her into a hug. While they embrace, he says he'll help her get some sleep. Inside Yihan's car, Haejun falls asleep. Yihan thinks to himself that she really meant it when she said she was going to sleep. Eventually, she opens her eyes and asks what time it is. She notices she's holding his coat and asks if it's his. Yihan remarks that she's finally looking him in the eye again, teasingly pointing out that she can recognize his coat immediately but not him. Haejun smiles and suggests he check the time. She explains she couldn't be gone for too long, so Yihan reassures her that he'll wake her up sooner rather than later. Concerned about being seen by others, he mentions the possibility of people walking by and noticing them, tells her it's not too late to stop worrying about being seen. If she's going to avoid someone by acting busy, she should at least take care of herself. If she had been eating and sleeping well, he wouldn't have left her alone. She insists she wasn't pretending, she's genuinely busy, questions if that's why she came up to his office floor at this hour, all because she's so busy. She explains that she had her reasons. After all, he doesn't know everything. He mentions how he waited for her to initiate a conversation first, even though he noticed her avoiding him. He brings up the time she saw him and quickly turned away, or when she opted for a different elevator upon seeing him. He reassures her that she can share whatever's on her mind. She brings up something she heard at Snow's wedding ceremony, catching his attention. He admits he's been meaning to discuss that day as well. He reassures her, urging her not to entertain the thought of leaving the hospital, especially if she's been scouted by her old professor. Glancing at her phone, she realizes she needs to head back. He nods understandingly, agreeing to finish their conversation the next time they see each other. As she prepares to leave, he adds that they'll have plenty of time to talk things over properly. At the hospital, Haejun and her colleague Juno sit down together to eat. As they enjoy their meal, their conversation drifts towards the topic of love. Haejun shares her thoughts, expressing a belief that while she may love someone deeply, she doubts she could ever give them absolutely everything she has. She even humorously admits that she wouldn't even share her food with them, suggesting that love isn't about handing over everything you possess. To her, love means more than just giving away material possessions. She questions the idea of sacrificing everything for love, wondering what good it would do to give up everything you have. Instead, she believes in holding on to what's important and maintaining a sense of self. After all, she argues, true love should enrich and strengthen both individuals, rather than depleting them. It's been her approach to life. When she had nothing, she just kept working hard until she became someone great. She's used her skills to save people's lives, and as long as she doesn't give up, they can stay together and see each other for a long time. Agrees, saying she can take the rest. Then, he brings up the heart transplant center being discussed. He asks if she's finding it difficult to prepare for that and suggests she ask the other doctors for help if she needs it. She tells him to forget it, she hasn't left anything from those self-centered know-it-alls. She's almost done anyway and can do really well by herself. Inwardly, she doesn't care if everyone says it won't work and that she's being stupid. As long as that one person believes in her, she'll be fine. She starts looking for her notebook. As she's searching, she hears some doctors gossiping about her, calling her an outcast. She walks over to their table and asks, "Who's an outcast?" The doctor who was talking starts sweating and panicking because he knows he's been caught. Back in Yihan's car, he talks to himself. Does she really want to move to a different hospital? Is that what's been bothering her for days? Does she think I'll just let her go without a fight? He shakes his head, feeling a bit frustrated and worried. Just then, he notices her notebook lying on the seat next to him. As he picks it up, a card falls out of it. He bends down and picks up the card, staring at it for a moment. This is the thing she always carries around with her, he says softly to himself. He looks at the card more closely and remembers. It's the first and last reply I ever wrote by hand. That was my response to the first time I felt someone's sincerity. He holds the card, thinking about how much it meant to both of them. Can't believe that a woman who has cherished a card with a simple response in it for 10 years has completely changed his life. As he sits there, he thinks about how much she means to him and how different his life is because of her. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the doctor who was gossiping gets up and apologizes to Haejun. He says they didn't realize they were speaking so loudly. Haejun isn't having it. She says, "You spoke that loudly because you wanted everyone to hear you. I was just observing your surgery with Dr. Choi earlier." "So, what did Choi say then? Did I inconvenience your team in any way, or are you implying I caused harm to the patient?" She says the worst thing she did was make him a bit late for lunch. Juno asks if that's really something he should be talking about so loudly. She reminds him that she was in a rush, but says it's not urgent enough to ignore someone talking badly about CS. She thinks his team probably values speed above everything else, but wonders if he can take full responsibility if something happens to one of his patients. She says there's no one in this hospital as thorough as Dr. Choi. He's the kind of doctor who checks every little thing. If she were to be a patient, she would rather have a doctor who puts all their focus on her at that moment, than someone who is using her body to try and set a new record. She adds that if he doesn't like that, he has no right to call himself a doctor. Just then, Chonsung shouts her name, says the other doctor is only sharing what others have been thinking. She tells him to forget it, she'll leave it for now, but he should get a better handle on the OS team. He says he will, he's sure she doesn't want to waste her time on small fry like them. She says she doesn't know what he's talking about, but he should watch it. He says, why is she running away? Does she have something to hide? Isn't it true that she and the chairman like to visit hotels together? No wonder she always acts so haughty, she has someone to back her up in this place. He's taken aback by his accusations. She insists that her interactions with the chairman are purely professional. She doesn't appreciate him spreading rumors about her personal life. He scoffs, saying he's just calling it like he sees it. She warns him not to cross the line. He retorts, saying she's just trying to cover up the truth. The tension between them grows as they exchange heated words. Says he knows it's impossible to read a person's mind, but she's a lot scarier than he thought. If he'd known she was that kind of person, then again, he did think things were a bit off from the start. The attending at Hankook University Hospital were desperate to keep her there, yet she still came to jail. He guesses she planned it all out from the start. Juno grabs Chonsung by his collar and tells him to shut up. Chonsung removes Juno's hands and says Haejun doesn't have anything to say because everything he's saying is true. She tells him to shut his mouth, feeling frustrated by his accusations. She explains that she's only at jail because she has a debt to repay, emphasizing that it has nothing to do with whatever crude fantasy he's come up with. Juno challenges her, questioning why she's getting so defensive if there's nothing to hide. She insists that she's not hiding anything and just wants to set the record straight. Chonsung, however, continues to press her, suggesting that she must have some ulterior motive for being at the hospital. Feeling increasingly agitated, Haejun raises her voice, asserting that she has a right to defend herself. She explains that if she doesn't speak up, no one will listen to her side of the story. Juno steps in, trying to defuse the situation by telling Chonsung to back off and stop provoking her. she says a hospital is a place where you have to step up and say things loudly in order to be heard. She explains that she has to keep performing more surgeries to make people realize that CS is needed here, and she would make this very clear. She insists she's never done anything that she's ashamed of. Chonsung interrupts, claiming he saw her going up to a hotel room with the chairman. She asks him, "So what?" Neither of them are underage, and neither of them was being forced. It's not like they were cheating on anyone, so what's the problem? He says she's admitted it, but he guesses she has no shame. He accuses her of acting like she has no interest in men, but what she's really after is money. She threw herself at the first guy she saw, he claims, and she says the fact that he's rich too is driving her crazy. Back at Yihan's house, he looks at his coat, saying it smells like Haejun. He puts a sticker saying "Do not wash." Mingguk and Kyungmin are told that Haejun is having an argument, and they rush to her. Haejun says Yihan is just too perfect. If he were just an average guy, things would have been much easier for both of them. Or even if he were worse off, she could have taken care of him instead. She's already going crazy because she doesn't know what to do with him. Yihan walks in and asks why she didn't just say so. He says if that was the issue, she should have just told him. He was wondering what was wrong and why she seemed upset. She calls him Mr. Seo, but he interrupts, saying isn't that too late to be calling him Mr. now? After all, that doesn't really fit their relationship, and he wouldn't want it to fit either. If she had told him from the start, he would have given up everything he had for her. Feeling a pang of regret, she apologizes, admitting she didn't mean to cause such a scene in the hospital. She explains that she was just overwhelmed by her emotions and didn't know how to handle it. Yihan nods understandingly, assuring her that it's okay. He suggests they talk things out calmly and find a solution together. Yihan says it's fine, as it led him right to her. He adds that it sounded like she was in the middle of a very interesting conversation. Chonsung says he wasn't going to bring this up to him, but Yihan asks how much he saw. He suggests they set things straight and correct any misunderstandings. Chonsung admits he saw them at a hotel together on Christmas Eve. Yihan says they were indeed at the hotel, but he's puzzled as to why Chonsung thinks there's something fishy going on. He wonders if Chonsung believes they were plotting to close down the hospital and start another business. Or perhaps Chonsung thinks Haejun was trying to ask him for something inappropriate. Chonsung insists it's obvious, pointing out that it's unusual for a man and a woman to meet at a hotel on Christmas Eve at such a late hour. Yihan nods, acknowledging the perception, but he explains that as a businessman, he frequently stays at hotels for work purposes. He assures Chonsung that their meeting was purely innocent and related to business matters. He suggests they put this misunderstanding behind them and focus on more pressing issues at the hospital. Yihan tells Chonsung that if he's going to claim he saw something, he should pay closer attention and accurately describe what he saw. Chonsung retorts, saying the least he can do is make it sound believable. He questions if Yihan is saying they did nothing but talk business that night. Yihan clarifies that's not the case. He proposed to Haejun. Everyone, including Haejun, is shocked by the revelation, asks what's wrong. Was everyone thinking they were doing something else? He wants to set things straight now. He admits he likes Dr. Yoon very much. The first day he saw her here, he couldn't take his eyes off her. He couldn't stop thinking about her so much that he couldn't focus on work. It got to be too much for him to handle, was determined to come up with any excuse to see her again, but fate was on his side. He tells Haejun that his feelings for her have never changed. He assures her that being open with each other and continuing what they've been doing is what their future will be like. He tells her she can give him her answer when they're alone. Haejun quickly dashes off, leaving Yihan to address everyone else. He suggests they all go and continue their meal. He believes he fully explained himself, but if there's anyone who doesn't understand, they should come to his office. However, he adds that the offer is only open to those who have never had a crush on Dr. Yoon. Yihan meets Chonsung and says he needs to ask him something. He asks if Shansung's girlfriend has ever confessed her feelings to him or acted in a way that made him believe she was interested in him. He assures Chansung not to be afraid to tell him if it ever happens, so that he can intervene before anything goes wrong. Haejun runs outside, feeling like it has to be a dream. She asks Yihan if it's really not a dream. Yihan catches up to her and tells her she's walked far enough. She questions why he followed her, insisting he can't say stuff like that in front of other people. He responds, asking where else he should have said it. He tells her they've come this far, so what can't they do? Haejun admits it wasn't like him at all. She says she's willing to do anything too, but they can't possibly force the impossible to happen. No matter how much effort she puts in, she could never become a suitable daughter-in-law for a Chaebol family. That's something she can't change. She tells him she knows his family is probably searching for the perfect woman to be his partner. He responds with a simple "so what?" She explains that she sees only one choice for them now. She asks him to please give her more time. Even though she can't be the perfect daughter-in-law, she believes she can still become a better person than she is now. She promises to become more skilled and in demand as a doctor. Her goal has always been to improve herself every day, and she wants to make that happen more than ever right now. She wants to be a doctor that patients can rely on and one that her colleagues are proud of. She tells Yihan that even if she can't become the perfect daughter-in-law, she wants to be someone anyone would be proud to know. Yihan responds, asking if that's why she's asking for more time. She questions if he's saying he can't even do that for her, if he really can't wait for her even when she's willing to go this far. Yihan chuckles slightly, prompting her to ask if he thinks it's funny. She tells Yihan firmly that she's not ready to let go of him or her work. She's determined to stick with him until the end, so he shouldn't even think about leaving her behind. But she makes it clear that marriage doesn't have to be the only end goal. Yihan seems puzzled. He can't believe what he's hearing. Is she just playing games with his feelings? He feels like she's driving him crazy, yet she's holding back when it comes to marriage. He wonders why she can be so caring with her patients and junior doctors, but she's hesitating to take care of him in the same way. She quickly reassures him that his doubts aren't true. She promises to take care of him and show him how much she cares, wonders why she's hesitant about marriage. She explains she's not outright saying no, but she believes they should approach such a big decision slowly, step by step. He seems surprised, asking if she actually wants to marry him and if she's just realizing it now. She urges him to be patient and wait for her. If he does, he'll see she's serious about their relationship. She reassures him that she always keeps her promises. Feeling hopeful, he kneels down and expresses his willingness to wait. He takes out a letter, symbolizing his commitment to wait for her decision, questions if it's truly necessary to wait any longer. He wonders how much better she can become at keeping promises than she is right now. Doesn't it feel like fate has brought them together? Confused, she asks him to clarify what he means. He cuts to the chase and asks her if she'll marry him. Holding up the letter, he asks if she still doesn't understand. Tears well up in her eyes as she takes the letter from his hand. She cries, realizing it's been him all this time. He gently reminds her that who else would wait for her for 12 years. She wonders what she's done wrong. Maybe she could have been nicer. She thinks she should have realized the moment she got his signature, but how could she have known? Haejun meets with Yihan and asks what he told her colleagues because everyone is acting like nothing happened. He replies that he didn't say much. She expresses frustration, saying that after he didn't say much, people are acting like that day never even happened. Yihan reassures her, saying everyone must realize how difficult it was for her, and they shouldn't worry about it anymore. He suggests they just enjoy their meal. Haejun mentions she hasn't eaten all day and wonders if she's just expecting something bad to happen because she watches those dramas. In the hospital, her colleagues are acting like nothing has changed, but the awkwardness and distance between them say otherwise. Juno rushes towards Haejun, demanding she pay back his life savings. He's upset that she extorted his small but precious life savings and got proposed to by a Chaebol. He's determined not to let it slide. Haejun retorts, asking when has she ever extorted anything from him. She reminds him that he gave her that money willingly. She explains that she basically gathered all the money she had and gave it to him. All he had was 476,000 won. Suddenly, she's called to the ER in Mrs. Cha's cozy home. She confesses that all she did was collect a few things because she was so excited. She never thought it would spread rumors and cause her to worry. She pulls out a necklace and asks Yihan if he thinks it would look good on Haejun. Yihan nods, saying it's not bad. Mrs. Cha ponders aloud, wondering if she should have bought a heart transplant center instead of jewelry. Yihan chuckles, suggesting she be more careful from now on with her excitement. They continue chatting happily, discussing family matters and catching up. At the hospital, Kyungmin asks Haejun if she needs anything to calm her nerves down. She insists she'll be fine, saying this is nothing. Just then, Yihan walks in with people following behind him. Haejun asked him not to help her, so she needs to do this on her own. She's nervous, but she's not scared. She feels a little lonely, but she's used to it, so it's fine. Just then, Dr. Choi chimes in, asking why she's blocking the hallway. He jokes if she rented it out. He adds that she has a way of standing in people's way and is adding more work to an already overworked department. She asks him what he wants. The only thing in that direction is the conference room, so why is he headed there? He explains that there's no one as meticulous and principled in the hospital as him. So if he doesn't attend the meeting for the heart transplant, who will? He clarifies that he doesn't like her, as they don't fit together at all. She agrees, saying the feeling is mutual. But she asks if he'll still join her in there. After all, they're all in this together with CS. They all start walking into the conference room. Yihan speaks up, encouraging everyone to voice their opinions. But before they begin, a member of the board raises a concern about Dr. Yoon. They mention a surgery she led on her own a few months back, which resulted in a significant loss for the hospital. They question whether it's appropriate to hear about such an important matter as the heart transplant center from someone with her track record, argues that the incident with Dr. Yoon is reason enough to reject the proposal. But he suggests that if they think about the costs and responsibilities involved in building such a facility, they should be cautious. Yihan chimes in, expressing his desire to explain further. After his explanation, he emphasizes that they shouldn't blame doctors for trying to save lives. Moving forward, he suggests they focus solely on the heart transplant center. He hopes they all make the right decision. Haejun meets Yihan at a restaurant, saying sorry for making him wait. She explains that their department decided to go out for dinner, and everyone was too pumped up, so she couldn't leave in the middle of it all. After all, it was a historic day for CS. Yihan hugs her, saying she's here now, and that's all that matters, asks if she thinks things went well, and she replies, of course. She points out that he saw it himself. Everyone in CS is feeling really positive. He mentions that she's always eager to help and save so many people, but she seems to overlook how her own boyfriend is doing. Shouldn't she focus on saving him right now, especially since she said he's her responsibility? Then, he holds her and says he wants to show her something. She's shocked when Mr. Kong appears on a video call, saying they're ready. On the day of the briefing at dawn, Mr. Kong has helped Yihan plan everything. Currently, Haejun encounters the patient that escaped. He thanks her for saving him. Yihan reassures her, saying he's being treated at Hankook University Hospital, so she shouldn't worry. Overwhelmed with emotion, Haejun starts crying. After the call, Yihan asks her if she's happy now. She replies with a big yes, feeling overjoyed. She wonders how on earth he managed to do it. Yihan explains that he searched the entire country by land and sea. Grateful, she thanks him sincerely. She acknowledges that he's a busy man, so she appreciates him believing in her. Yihan then suggests that there's somewhere they need to go. They arrive at a jewelry shop, and he tells her to pick whatever she wants. He explains that his mother bought many rings on her own, but he thinks it's best for them to choose their rings themselves. She looks around and picks one she likes. At the hospital, Haejun's friends urge her to hurry. Suddenly, she spots a banner saying congratulations, the heart transplant center has been confirmed. Dr. Choi approaches her and acknowledges that she was a bit difficult to deal with, but she actually pulled it off. Haejun humbly replies that she couldn't have done it without all of them. She promises to do her best in the future. She dashes out to meet Yihan, hugging him tightly as she exclaims that he knew about it. He confidently responds, "Of course, nothing gets past me." Just as they're about to kiss, she gets called to the ER. Apologetically, she says she has to go and rushes off. Watching her go, he reassures her, saying she should take all the time she needs. He'll be waiting for her. Rain pours heavily as Juno stands outside, feeling the weight of Haejun's absence. He never realized he'd miss her presence this much. Maybe he should consider finding a girlfriend of his own. After a while, Yihan sneaks up from behind and startles him. Juno asks what he's doing here, and Yihan replies that he was waiting for him. Seo Yihan is the eldest son in his family, and they own a big company called Seomoon Group. Since he's the oldest, everyone expects a lot from him, and he quickly became the company's heir. People call him a sleepless beast because he never takes a break. He's always working and using his pen like a knife to handle business. He lives like he has 48 hours in a day, but now, he's met someone who's even busier than him. It's a new feeling for him. For the first time in his life, he's feeling lost. It's like he doesn't know what to do because he's used to being the busiest person around. Yihan and Juno sit together, enjoying drinks and food. Yihan starts talking about Haejun, mentioning that all she's done is study and work until now. He wanted her to have a moment to just relax, but it seems like they're not planning on coming back anytime soon. Even his family won't tell him anything about her whereabouts. He's clueless about what she could possibly be doing. Juno hesitates, wondering if he should say it, but then he goes ahead. He explains that Haejun is different from everyone else. Back in med school, she had a nickname, Human Magnet. People would flock to her wherever she went, even if she was just passing by. And whenever they went to remote areas for volunteer work, all the cows born after their visit would have names with Hae or Jun in them. That's just how much people adored her. Mentions how Haejun has this knack for bringing people together, no matter where she is. Even though she might feel down because of hospital politics, she's made a real difference for them here too. Once, NS and CS were in a spat, but Haejun stepped in and sorted things out. They ended up all smiling, having scheduled a friendly volleyball match together. Someone really needs to stick by her side all the time and look out for her. Yihan mentions that Haejun is currently visiting his parents at their home. She's spending time with her future in-laws, so it can't be that bad. Juno chimes in, saying that by the time she gets back to Seoul, they'll have planned 10 gatherings. He's so sure about it that he'd bet his entire life savings on it. Later that evening, Yihan gives Haejun a call. She can't stop talking about all the places she's visiting and how his other relatives are joining in the fun. She lets him know that she won't be back tomorrow. Yihan listens patiently and tells her not to worry, urging her to make the most of her time away and enjoy herself. Yihan thinks to himself that Haejun is really enjoying herself, even without him around. After all, she's with some of Korea's best fun seekers, so she'll probably be busy just trying to keep up with them. Just then, he notices messages from his family, urging him to come and take Haejun away. Yihan quickly dials his mother's number. Before she can even say anything, he's already rushing out the door, asking if something happened to Haejun and saying he'll be there right away. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Cha's home, Haejun arrives to look for her. She overhears Yihan talking on Mrs. Cha's phone and remembers their earlier conversation, where she mentioned she wouldn't be able to return to Seoul tomorrow. Yihan gives her a ring to make sure everything's alright. She tells him they're doing great, just having a grand old time playing games with his mom all day long. She's really enjoying herself, not feeling tired one bit, Mrs. Cha confirms. With a big smile, Haejun tells Yihan they'll chat later, since his mom is in top form. A few days later, Haejun swings by Yihan's place, and wow, she's looking stunning. Yihan notices this cool necklace around her neck and asks about it. Haejun says it's a gift from his second uncle, a beautiful jade necklace made by a really skilled craftsperson. Haejun spills the beans that actually, it was his third aunt's sister-in-law who made her clothes. And get this, Yuhan, the funny guy, walks in wearing something from the same talented relative. In the living room, Haejun mentions she needs to wash her hands, and Mrs. Cha and her sister quickly agree, pushing her to go. Before she heads off, she tells Yihan to open the gifts they received from his family. As she leaves, Yihan checks in with his mom and aunt to see if they're alright. They confess they're not okay, they're just exhausted. They can't keep up with Haejun's energy and enthusiasm. Half-jokingly, they talk about running away before she returns, since they can't believe there's someone who plays as hard as she does. They suggest Yihan waits for Haejun to open the gifts together. Later that day, Yihan and Haejun take a stroll outside. He checks in with her, asking if she's sure she didn't feel weird earlier. She reassures him, saying she had a blast and felt totally comfortable. Yihan's relieved to hear that. Haejun grabs his hand and confesses that she actually missed him too. While she was helping out with the mini hammock and even when she was paragliding, she couldn't help but wish he was there with her. She suggests they plan a vacation together next time. Yihan agrees, saying he'll be ready whenever she is. They settle down, and Haejun admits she loves just hanging out together, doing nothing special, maybe sitting side by side, gazing at the stars. Yihan wonders if there's anything else she wants to do, and she's like, heck yeah. She wants them to have a movie night, sharing popcorn and cozying up. Also, she's craving those delicious fish cakes from a street food stall on a chilly winter day. Plus, she's all about munching on tteokbokki during rainy weather and going fishing together. After listing all these awesome things, she jokes that they might as well get married. Yihan jumps up in frustration, and Haejun wonders if he's having second thoughts about getting married. He quickly reassures her, saying he does want to get married. He grabs her hand and suggests having the wedding on Saturday, 2 weeks from now. He asks if she's okay with it, and she eagerly agrees. Yihan kisses her, relieved that she's on board with the plan. Chairman Seo's mother has put in a ton of work for the wedding. It's the day she's been dreaming about for so long. What a gorgeous day for a wedding. Haejun enters, looking stunning in her wedding dress. She chats with her friends as they admire her appearance. Haejun didn't expect everything to come together so perfectly in such a short time. Snow congratulates Haejun, noticing that she looks a bit tired. She mentions that having a sports day right before her wedding might have been too much. Haejun reassures her, saying she's not tired at all. The next day is the sports day. Dr. Kim Minjun from GS wins first place. Haejun apologizes to Yihan, saying she should have run faster. She explains that she had to suddenly slow down because she was looking for him. What else could she want besides him? Haejun realizes she can live without anything else, but she can't live without him anymore. He agrees, saying he feels the same way. Suddenly, he grabs her and kisses her as people cheer around them. From the wedding yesterday, Haejun had a feeling she might be pregnant, but the wedding ended so perfectly. Everyone enjoys themselves at the wedding. Yihan tells Haejun that he'll make sure she never regrets marrying him by being a great husband. She asks if he'll also be a good father, and he assures her that he will. Then, she somewhat casually informs him that he's going to be a dad really soon. He hugs her tightly, expressing his love for her, and she responds by saying she loves him too as they share a kiss. At home, Haejun has a strange dream about a lion cub with 4 front paws. Yihan wakes her up from her nap, and she wonders why he didn't wake her earlier when he arrived. He explains that she looked too tired. Then, she asks if he's told his mom about the pregnancy yet because she cried so much at the wedding. She's worried that if his mom knows she's pregnant, she might faint. Yihan reassures her not to worry about that and just focus on herself and her health. After discussing the baby for a while, Haejun starts receiving messages from Mrs. Cha and Yihan. She tries to look at her phone, but Yihan won't allow it. He picks her up and insists that she shouldn't even lift a finger. Later that night, he secretly calls his mom and tells her to cancel all their plans. A few days later, Haejun talks to Yihan. She tells him that it was him. A few days ago, his mother came to see her and cried the whole time. She said her heart was acting up, and her main symptom was crying whenever she saw Haejun's face. When Yihan visited her, he kept asking whether she liked pink or blue. After she mentioned looking around for a water cooler on the 4th floor, there were 10 of them there the next day. Yesterday, as a joke, Haejun mentioned she hoped they'd have lobster and lamb chops for lunch, and today, those were exactly on the cafeteria menu. She knew Yihan was behind it, and it seems like everyone else in the hospital caught on too. Yihan brushes it off, saying it doesn't matter because they're about to find out anyway. As they go in for the ultrasound, they're told she's having twins. Haejun keeps working, making her patients happy, and she spends quality time with her friends. They're still searching for gold in the area designated for the transplant center. Her belly is growing rapidly, maybe because she's carrying twins. Yihan meets Haejun at the construction site. He wonders why she bothers cleaning up when it'll all get messy again during the groundbreaking ceremony. Haejun tells him that pouring affection in at the start spreads good energy to the patients later. Yihan asks if she had a good day, and she mentions her lion cubs. She still can't believe everything happening. It's like her dreams and promises are finally coming true. Yihan asks Haejun if there's anything else she wants for the center. She mentions wanting the waiting room to feel cozy so patients feel less nervous with their families. She also hopes for a small garden to comfort patients who can't go outside. Additionally, she wants easy access to the snack shop and examination rooms. Yihan suggests his mother could make it happen, and Haejun recalls everything his family promised to help her with. Then, Haejun adds that she hopes nobody ever has to come to the center. She wishes nobody gets sick enough to need a place like this. Yihan reassures her, saying that as long as she's there, anything is possible. With this wholesome story comes to an end. If you liked it, please support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Until next time, ciao.